All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics and Local, America's number one
One.
political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for the Mayor's Forum, particularly if it is the third Friday. So we want to welcome y'all to the show. Of course, Mayor Baraka is going to be up. We're going to get into some conversation with him, particularly about a number of different things. But we have a full lineup. I mean, there's some things that we definitely want to talk about as we in these holidays, and some things are coming up. Zaid, you want to talk about some of the other things that are going to be coming up, 7 o'clock and going forward?
7 o'clock. Donna has a special guest that's going to we're going to do a segment on black men and mental health. Check that out. Right, that's that. I'm looking forward to that. 7:30. I've got some students from Seton Hall University in their fight to save Africana studies, or really to reclaim Africana studies. And of course, we'll wind up with our own the great DJ Rhino to give us our take us out of our hip hop segment. But this is not just the mayor's segment. This is the last segment of the year with the mayor.
Yeah.
So we got to really dig in and get everything we can from this young man as we possibly can. And I'm sure he's ready.
Yeah, as he sits down, last night on Channel 13, I seen the mayor. He was being interviewed. Who does the show with the DNA? The professor, is he from Yale? And they were being interviewed in the yard at Ralph Daniels. So it was like a round table in the yard. I believe it was probably in August.
Henry Louis Gates.
Up at Martha's Vineyard, and it was Mayor Baraka, Ralph Daniels, a couple of there was a sister on there who was an activist after George Floyd, and a couple of professors from various places. But it was a very good, and it was another professor too. But it was but I could see it was from. I'm sure it was from August, and I'm sure it was probably taken back up in while he was in Martha's Vineyard. But it was a good interview, and it was on PBS 13.
Yeah,
Watching it last night.
Well, let's give it to the mayor. It's his show, so we're gonna ride with him and whatever he want to talk about. Obviously, we'll get into some things with him. But Mayor, welcome to the Mayor's Forum. What's good, brother?
Welcome, man. It's just been a rough couple of months for me, man. The last time I was supposed to be on, I lost one of my good friends, Dwayne Middleton, Heavy.
And Heavy. Oh my God.
Yeah, he passed away. Had cancer. I couldn't get on the show because, I was actually just got the news and had ran up to the hospital. Yeah. He's been with me for a very, very long time.
I had no idea he was even sick. That was a bomb.
Yeah. And, then today, Alexis, a big Lex that be with me, she passed away as well.
Oh, I just got a call about her last night.
Man, did you say Alexis?
Yeah.
Oh,
Trust
wow.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just passed, not too long ago. We was up in the hospital a couple of days ago, and she just passed. So just been rough,
Yeah, both of them were absolutely devoted to you.
Yeah,
wonderful people. You love the. Oh man, yeah, two bombs.
Yeah, so those are like they're very young. They're young, I mean, they not even 50 yet,
Right.
Wow. And they were soldiers too, so they were like real soldiers. They weren't like people acting like soldiers. they was real, die hard.
Yes,
soldiers, community folks that was ready. So I knew I met him, and he was in 100 Black Men of Rutgers, and then he became one of the sergeant at arms at for Black Neoforce when we had that organization going over, and was with us ever since. Yeah, long before this mayor and council stuff even transpired. Hev was out there working, so and these guys are real activists. I mean, Hev, he didn't get a lot of, he not out here making noise. He was a real quiet guy, but 100% dependable. You know, something go on, he gonna be there. That's what you need. You know, a lot of people talk a good game, but when the fights start, you don't see him.
That's right.
But he was definitely there. So, you know, it's been crazy, but you know, we trying to stay focused and continue to do what we need to do, man. You know, it's just and you know, the time period in the country is very dangerous. So, you know, you need solid people with you all of the time. You know, 'cause it's just very dangerous place we in New Jersey, especially. You know,
everywhere.
This is the Soprano state. Ain't no doubt about that.
Oh, absolutely, man. You know, I just learned today that, you know, the Christopher Columbus statue that we replaced downtown, that there's another one on in the north, and nobody had even thought about that. But I heard that there were people who came down there in front of their vigilantes waiting for people to come and tear the statue down. But we never even nobody ever even made it over there.
Wow.
Which is crazy. I just found out today. Somebody just told me that, you know, that they saw them out there. I was like, wow, that's really crazy. You know what I'm saying?
And that's what
really crazy.
people always say when they think you're gonna do something, because that's what they would do.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a meeting with some young people yesterday, man, in my office from Global Studies, who are experiencing serious racism, man, in Newark. And two of them, parents transferred them out. One of the sisters had a chemo on, said the kids were saying her father was probably a terrorist and flew the plane and blew up the World Trade Center. And
you said right here in Newark?
Yeah, and adults know this stuff and have not intervened in any capacity. I mean, kids calling them gorilla and monkey and all kind of stuff. That's terrible. Like, especially in this city, you know, like that ain't supposed to happen. First of all, Newark is a Muslim town. Like anybody that could, like, you know,
don't get me started on
Muslims. Yeah, period. Defile Muslims in Newark is like unheard of.
You can be on Branford Place. You can be over by Brick Towers, and you can at prayer time, and you can just hear.
Oh yeah,
over 100 years.
Very serious.
Over 100 years of presence from Noble Drew Ali.
Listen,
from Noble Drew Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and other Sunni Muslim communities. Over 100 years of presence in this town. Newark is probably one of the most Muslim cities in the country.
Yeah,
in the country.
That's right. And to get that kind of response from kids totally is terrible. Yeah,
totally unacceptable.
I was really shocked.
2022. I can see that in 60, 65, 72, but not in 2022.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, I heard it out of their mouth. They put it on a chat, you know, that the kids are talking about, and like the adults are not addressing that stuff, and you know they get that from somewhere. Like then it's not pulling this out of the thin air, talking like this. This is something that they got from other adults in the community who are espousing this nonsense to them, and it needs to be corrected. And folks aren't correcting it. And that's really what the chief problem is that I have. I'm going to go on over there on Wednesday. The kids are starting a Black Student Union there. So this is high school.
Beautiful. Mayor, and I will take this opportunity to ask this question, because probably in the last couple of years, we have heard young people as young as 12 years old committing suicide because they're being bullied. I'm sorry. So, and we just had one of our premier DJs leave his house, walk down to a local hotel, check in, and had a family with a wife and 3 beautiful daughters, and he took his life when you thought he had everything in his toolkit that he needed.
Right.
And so you're saying here these young people have adults around them, and perhaps they're telling them and they're not responding to them, which gives them like a feeling of, well, if I can't go to people I think should be helping me, who do I go to? And it seems like, and they begin to think that they're helpless. How do we, I'm like, now Dave Chappelle told a story. There was a prominent cook that took his life last year, and then he told a story about a lawyer friend of his that lost his law license, got in trouble, and he was working at Foot Locker, but he never thought to kill himself. How
Yeah.
do we how do we help? How do we first of all create a place that our young people have a place to go to, and that they don't feel helpless, that they feel that if I will get through today. It might be bad, but tomorrow's another day.
Well, I think people need therapy, brother, and we need to talk about it. And it has to be okay to have mental illness and be depressed and all of that. I mean, the data is really crazy. The third leading cause of death for Black men now is suicide. You know, which means that it's growing. The first one is homicide, of course, and then the third one is suicide, which is really telling. And then I think it's like 1 out of 7 or 9 children actually have a written out, thought out plan to commit suicide.
Wow.
Right. So those numbers are getting very, very alarming, particularly in our community, because we used to think, this is something that we don't do. But as you can see, that's not true. And especially now as those numbers grow. And if our kids are already dealing with the issues of COVID and all the other stress and trauma that they got growing up in these communities as it is, to have to experience racism in their own city, compounds that issue. And if the adults don't do anything, they normalize that behavior, then, it gets even worse. So we have to create spaces where we're able to talk about these things. This stuff has to be addressed.
And one of the problems, man, I think is even crazier, because one of the things you always talk about, and you said this before you was elected, and then when you got elected, you used to always talk about culture being a weapon, right?
It is, yes.
And so for these,
I got that from Amilcar Cabral, though, brother.
That's right. That's right.
So think about it, man. Just in terms of us understanding that, and for somebody to be doing that in our city with our brother is the mayor who has been talking about culture from that perspective, that's insane. That just doesn't.
Yeah, it is insane, man. And it's really the people that are in charge of these places, these systems. They have to address it. And I just think racism in America has been made okay right now. Like it is like it is okay to be racist. Like people are dismissing the fact that people are white supremacists, that they're just going forward with it like it's something, this is going to exist, you have to live with it type of thing. And so people are coming out saying all type of stuff. And it's not being addressed. And our kids aren't there are no organizations that helping these kids equip themselves for this. So I applauded the kids for having a Black Student Union. I told them to do exactly what you said, and they needed to have cultural and social political programs in the school and invite speakers and do all kinds of things to educate themselves and other kids in the building about what's going on and why this happens, and the history, their own history. And there's a serious kind of growing divide between Black and brown kids in the city that just has to be addressed. It's coming from somewhere, but it has to be addressed. Like we have to talk about it. And that's simply because people have no idea of their own history.
That's right. Certainly not
or their relationship to all of this stuff. So they're saying things based on stuff that's not true, mythology, and just really folks who pit us against one another because it serves their interests. So you got Latinos who, if you go to where they come from, are people there blacker than us. You know what I'm saying? So you just have to, that we don't understand the mestizo, the mixed of all of us, right? The mix between the African, European, and Native because of the act of history of slavery. And folks don't understand that, so they think that they're different, in some capacity, when nobody is telling them their history, and that's the real problem of not knowing your history and not knowing culturally and socially, where you're from and what your relationship is to the Americas and all of this stuff,
And that's why I say it's absolutely insane for that to be happening in our city
Mm-hmm.
The man, like, how could anybody be teaching in our school and not know, right? That and you know, man, we came up in the '90s, right? By
Mm-hmm.
listening to all of the different speakers and all of the different events.
Ed, you muted accidentally, but now I understand where Ed is going.
Annette, if you're in the background, you can unmute Ed. Annette, unmute Ed.
Hey,
There we go.
he's
I'm
unmuted
good.
now.
So what I'm saying is, man, is that you know, I applaud them young people too, right? You know, for them starting a Black Student Union. You remember, you know, being on campus. I remember being at Essex County College and starting some Black organizations ourselves, just so Calvin Butts and all of them could come to the school, man, and we could get funding in order to do that. But the
Yeah.
problem is, as you say, you know, I mean, unfortunately, those very people who are the adults, unfortunately, those people aren't really helping those young people either, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is, they probably don't even know their damn history, you know,
That's
and they
true.
probably haven't.
That's true. And that's the problem with, you know, us, even when we advocate for Black studies and Chicano studies and Latino studies and all that to be in schools, who's going to teach it?
Right.
You know, because the people you asking to teach it are going to have to learn it with the kids.
Right. So, Mayor, last week, Kalina was talking about, listen, why aren't we organizing that? It's not okay that the Amistad legislation is fully in this New Jersey school system. Why aren't we not organizing? If we did one school board meeting a month, you figure, and kept this issue at the table, we would probably have the Amistad curriculum fully in our school system. But we have to be committed to doing these things.
I agree with you. That's exactly what needs to happen.
And
I
that's
mean,
what Kalina said. Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
See, I mean, these people, the you know, we got folks now that are in authority that when you tell them something is wrong, they're gonna raise their hand, and they think that's enough. And raising their hand in agreement, like, yeah, this is wrong, but they're not committed to doing anything about it. Right? That's another step, right? So you got people who are opposed to it altogether. That's a whole different kind of fight. You know, these people that are in there now, you know, they'll say, oh yeah, there's a problem, but they're not committed to do anything about it. And you're gonna have to push them to get these things done, because this stuff is about more like horse trading and politics and all of this stuff, more than it's about getting these things accomplished and improving the quality of people's lives. I mean, that's just really the fact of the matter. So the Amstat legislation is good, and we need to push it and make sure that they fully implement it. Then they're going to have to do some workshops for teachers on how to teach it, and books that they should read, and curriculum that needs to be written. All of this stuff, or used, because there's curriculum out there that can be used for this. Because I would venture to say half the people, if not more, in the school district that are organized to teach this stuff just don't know it.
Principal Capelli just shouted us out also. Cannot fathom how and why the Amistad has not taken hold in urban New Jersey, meaning that's our community's responsibility. The law says every school in the public school system is supposed to get it. So those places where we're a majority, we should be. It's our responsibility to make sure that's implemented.
Right.
You know,
and that goes back to what I said too, though, because those people in there don't know it. And you're talking about Negro, these people that are in power who are not clear on what the Amistad legislation says, you know, and who are writing this curriculum for these school districts, you know, who don't think that's important.
And every August, there has been, probably for the last 10 years at least, there has been a workshop on how to teach the curriculum.
Right.
Right. And they just not showing up.
Yeah, because the school districts have to demand that happens. They have workshops every year. They have staff development. They have to write that into the staff development, say this is what they need, and actively become committed to Amistad legislation. We need to do that, right? And honestly, in Newark, in full transparency, we need to be pushing it ourselves, like because it's not happening. And with the level of incidents that are beginning to happen in the city, that are too many for me. It's high time that we begin to push that. We just had an equity conference around education in Newark because of that, because of those kind of issues. We just had a large equity conference, and then a lot of community people, students, parents came, but not enough educators. So I had to have another kind of gathering at Panasonic with citywide leaders, educational leaders, principals, superintendents, to speak about equity in the school system. Everything from segregation to curriculum to pipelines that undermine and inhibit Black boys from becoming successful, right? That we have to talk to them about that. And, a step further, we're going to have to really put together, which is what Dr. Brown is getting ready to do, put together some solid steps that we think the district needs to take in order to make sure our district is more equitable. Because we can't be fighting for equity statewide in education, and in Newark, there's no real equity.
That's right. We should be leading the way.
So, Mayor, today, Pop put out the minutes because there was a meeting today about the Amistad Commission, and I believe this is the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
And I'm reading the notes now, and they have some goals, but we'll get this to Ed and make sure we get it to you.
Yeah.
But there was in a summary of the proceedings on October 19th, but I believe we are right at the 20th year of its passage.
That's right. We are.
Mm-hmm.
Special thanks to Bill Payne for stewarding that through the legislature. And he's approaching 90. One of our most senior elder statesmen on that front.
But you know what would be a crime is if all of this stuff that we talk about, man. If we don't get some of this work done on the mayor's watch, and the mayor mess around and move on from Newark, and we haven't really taken the opportunity to really do that, I think it's on us. And the organizers shouldn't be on the mayor. I think the organizers should be on us.
It's on the community.
That's right, on the community.
Yeah.
That's what Kalina said. That's exactly what she said last week.
Yeah. Because
I was referring to Kalina Perriman, one of our sharp young education advocates in the city. Mm-hmm.
And if you and Governor Murphy, just let me say this, and then you can probably say this. He has said that he is committed. There was a funding question, and then what came out of this discussion from funding to get a group of a cohort together so they could do a trip, I believe, to Africa. And I don't know where that conversation went. Go ahead, Annette. I'm sorry.
So my concern is the Amistad Commission is made up of a number of commissioners, and I'm not sure that the commissioners are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing in terms of making sure that the curriculum is implemented in the way that it's supposed to be done, and what kind of checks and balances should we have in place to make sure that the appointed commissioners, the people that were appointed to those positions, are actually doing things to further the implementation or make sure that Amistad is taught in classrooms across the state.
Yeah. We got to make sure they have, I don't know if they get to have any public meetings that people should go to in their public meetings, the organizational meetings, the other meetings that they may have that, I don't know, all these boards and commissions. So there's no real penalty on boards and commissions. They're appointed by elected officials. Probably the governor appoints these people on these commissions. And, if there's no clear goal for them, they just sit, they just serve. So I would say if there's a public meeting, people should be able to go to the public meeting and talk about that, or at least send a list of things that we think should happen to the commissioner chair around things that we think are not happening, and say that these things need to happen, right? And then put pressure on our local superintendents to be able to implement the things that need to be implemented.
Principal Kafele, who's a regular listener and one of our favorite experts on the issue, just chimed in making the same point. Superintendents in all these urban districts must be held accountable. It's not rocket science, and he's one of our best trainers of teachers. Right, so
that's right.
He knows
that's
what
right.
he's talking about. We also had to face the loss that we had with Amistad too. We had an excellent director who was doing her damnedest to try and retrain teachers, and Stephanie James Harris, and she had to step off because she was concerned about the lack of support and the hassles that she was getting from the bureaucratic dimensions of the demands of the job too, right? So we need somebody in that seat, right?
I can imagine.
That can deal with a commission, that can deal with a governor, and that can deal with putting together the kind of squad to train teachers, in all those spaces where we need to go. So we've got our hands full on that one, but it's our task and our time.
That's right. No, I agree totally. But the onus is on these superintendents, though. You have to put pressure on superintendents to get this done, because they have the authority to do it, and they got the legal letter of the law that gives them the support to get it done. And the irony is that in most states, in a lot of states around the country, they're doing the reverse. They're banning books and taking those studies out of school. In New Jersey, you have the ability to do this, and so we have the ability and are not doing it.
That's right. Go ahead, Principal Cafelli. We will be supporting you.
We second that motion. Yeah, we hear you, beloved.
We will make that request from Pop. We will suggest that. And Mayor, going back to your meeting in the office, and I don't know when you were setting up, I was telling everybody that I seen you. It was with Dr. Gates. You were at a meeting, and Ralph Daniels were there.
Yeah.
Y'all were sitting in the chair, and then there was a young lady. They were popping in and out with different segments. And there was a young lady. I think her name was Bridget Cross from Rutgers, and she was talking about the Howard and the atmosphere, and the atmosphere that Howard gave. You go to Howard and how you come there, you're given the tools and you're given the support, and you're a Howard alumni. So I think about that. Students coming in your office and they're explaining. And during the 60s, there were teachers who took students in basements and taught them how to deal with what was going on during Jim Crow. Is it time that we have to prepare our students on how to deal with some of these things that are going on now?
100%, 100%. One, because of the national climate is just dangerous, and I keep saying that because it is. Anytime when people can run up into a United States congressman's woman's house, and beat her husband up in the home and try to tie him up. Yeah, and try to tie him up. Where they can run into the Capitol and they're banning books. The severity of the climate is so intense. People, I think that we overlook the time that we're in, because that is very, very dangerous. Because if people are running to the home of a United States congressman and do that, I mean, what's stopping them from running in your home?
Yep.
Yeah, and if they think they can get away with that, you got other United States congresspeople protecting the individuals that ran into the U.S. Capitol. And not only are they not charged with anything, they still have their jobs.
Yep.
So, I mean, so that very thing.
Be in jail.
I mean, this is a dangerous period, and people like in New Jersey think that everything is okay because it's a blue state, but it's just not true.
Yep.
Over 40% of the folks that voted in New Jersey voted for Donald Trump. Number one, plus, I mean, we have some difficult things going on in the state, man. Here's a place where people can't even say the word reparations, never mind have a committee to talk about it. I mean, here they go, the Institute of Social Justice give you a layup and tell you to do a committee. You can't even do that. So I think because of the way things are organized here across the state, it almost paralyzes people, in terms of trying to get things done on a statewide level. And it's difficult. And so if our kids feel attacked in Newark, imagine what our kids feel like in other districts that are there. Because if they're in those schools, they're very little, because 50% of African Americans in New Jersey go to schools that are 90% African, 90% Black and brown. And the other half go to schools that are at least 75% Black and brown.
Yep.
So most kids in New Jersey are segregated. Now, if you got a couple that are in some of these predominantly white schools, you don't understand, the kind of experiences they're having as well. The school system is completely. There are more school districts in New Jersey than there are municipalities.
Mm.
There are over 600 school districts in New Jersey and only 565 municipalities.
Mm.
So there's more superintendents than there are mayors.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you think about that, because when you get down South Jersey, you have, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, because these people, they would pay extra amount of money for segregation.
Mm.
You complain about your taxes, but you're not complaining about that part of it, right? You know, you'll pay extra for your kid to go to a specific school that is not inclusive on purpose, even if you have to create your own school district.
Mm. Is that a result of the charter schools?
No, that has nothing to do with charter schools.
Yeah, that's interesting. 565 municipalities, 600 superintendents.
That's the way the school system is organized. You know, you got all of these other kind of districts, regional district, this district, that district. You got some district with one school in it.
There
Right.
was a move,
Yeah, because
right,
some municipalities' salaries were like 27 people. Yeah, I'm sorry, what you said?
some years ago, there was a move to try and get some of these districts to come together. And there was absolutely a backlash against that.
Sure.
Reasons that Mayor Baraka stated, you know, they.
Now, that was Christie that tried to do that, correct?
Oh, man. I think there were a couple of governors that tried to do that.
A couple of people.
Right.
Because tax-wise, it makes sense tax-wise to combine everybody. But, you know, folks, don't, you know, they're just not interested in it. You know, because New Jersey has home rule. So, you know, all these municipalities can form if they want. You can take a couple of blocks, what happened in Newark, and expatriate, you know, move out of there and create your own little situation. Have your own mayor, your own council, your own police director, all of this stuff, which is what happens. And these towns fight for it vociferously. But there's some things that just has to happen. I mean, there's shared services with police and fire, all that stuff needs to happen. But school system especially. If we continue this level of segregation, you're always going to have the fomenting of racism in this state, because people benefit from the fact that they don't get to even be around Black people, never mind Black and brown people, never mind study what it's about.
You know, what's interesting is that make me think about Dr. King's book where he said, "Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?" You know, and we see that's the thing, right? For me, you know, how could we be these dudes, right, or these ladies who got all this damn education that you know our parents wanted us to get, you know, and all the civil rights folks, and we got all of that, and here we are in 2022. In less than 30 days, it'll be 2023, and we still got kids in the city of Newark, right, who are experiencing racism. How could that even be possible?
Yeah, that was my sentiments, brother. When I heard it, man, my heart hurt in there. I was like, and the way those kids, they were very articulate. The way you're talking about 10th and 11th graders that were describing it, you know, and what was happening to them, and what they see happening to teachers as well. So they weren't just talking about themselves; they were also talking about other teachers that they saw that were also experiencing this kind of isolation and attack.
That just doesn't compute for me, man. Because I'm like, wow, you know, I know that, you know, I'm not involved in the Board of Education like that, but I can tell you, man, that for them kids, I mean, you know, we definitely need to be organizing with them and finding out how we can support them, not only just in terms of helping them organize that Black Student Union, but more importantly, making sure that they know that they got support, right? Because at the end of the day, you can blow, you know this, man, and everybody on this live know, you can blow a kid's confidence, man, in himself being Black, right? You know, just in terms of him being able to make it in society. And you think suicide is one issue when they become adult. Hell, I mean, these kids keep trying to figure out who they are in the world.
The young lady's mother said she had to take her to therapy.
That's right.
Because the one who was told that her father was a terrorist. You know, because she wear the kima. You know, it's difficult. You know, I know the feeling. You know, when I was a kid, you know, when we were thrust into in the public schools, it's different. You know, you coming from a different environment. You like African free school. You're not celebrating Christmas. You got names that are different from everybody else. It's just different, right? You know, and people respond to you differently. So my brother and I got the brunt of that the most as kids in school. Your name Obalaji and Raz Jua and everybody else's name is Mark and Ben and Bob. And so at the end of the day, and you don't celebrate Christmas, you don't celebrate this, just trying to get over that and be normal. You feel like you're normal with everybody else is a difficult leap for a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? For an 11-year-old, a fourth grader, a fifth grader. Now, if you go into an environment where you're trying to fit in and they're now attacking you because of those things, like they're attacking you, but not that it's just funny or different and people make jokes, but now you're being attacked because of this. You almost resent the idea that you have to wear your kima, that you have to come to school like this.
Right. And let me just say this, Donna. And let me tell you something. If anybody who grew up in Newark, or if you came up in Newark at the time I came up in Newark, and you came up in the 70s and in the 80s, and you came here trying to act like you had some sort of negative feeling about Muslim. Let me tell you something. There was a time you couldn't even walk down South Orange Avenue, right? And look at MGT the wrong way without getting your ass busted before you got to the end of the block.
Absolutely right.
And so we talking about somebody saying something.
We beat back some racism in this town.
Right.
That's right.
Who these people are who are in this city now that think that they can do that in the city, because maybe because we don't walk around and brothers don't walk around like they used to, right? And I ID who the Muslims are, but I think whoever those people are, they got it twisted.
Oh no, but and the problem is these are children, brother. So in the confines of their home and the stuff they see on TV and social media, they're being fed these messages that tell them that it's okay to be against Muslims, that it's okay to be against Black Lives Matter, that it's all right for them. Not only is it okay, it's popularized for people to be against Muslims, to be against Black Lives Matter. So nationally, so we're not divorced from the national culture. So nationally, it's okay for people to attack Muslims. After 9/11, it became okay for people to scapegoat and attack Muslims. And that's what happens.
And you think about Dick Wolf. Dick Wolf, he has shows. He has a Law and Order, Chicago PD. How many shows he has? And each of those shows has done a storyline about Muslims being attacked, and it's a normal storyline to see coming. You know, that comes on at 8 o'clock in somebody's household, and then they're seeing it on the internet, and then they go to school. And I can think my uncle was one of the he sat on the board of the Chad school. So I think during that time in Newark, it was, oh my, to come out, you were proud to be. I could just sit here. I remember about the founding of the Chad school, some of the things they did. Now, I don't know, but just from reading it, it was almost like, wow, when you were part of the Chad school, you were something. It was like something to be really proud of.
Right.
So, wow, I just, you were speaking Swahili, and, it was, and now just.
Yeah, our community consciousness was in a different place then because the movement was in a different place. But the piece that I want to add to this on the question of Islamophobia and us being not in a bubble from what's going on in the rest of the country, there was a threat. There was a white supremacist threat on a mosque in Piscataway just a few weeks ago. And CARE, the Civil Rights Islamic Organization, had a press conference around. I said, y'all don't just do a press conference, do a rally, and have everybody come out that's supposed to be in solidarity with you, right? And whoever comes out, that's who you build your organizing around to make sure we check that, right? And why is that also important? Let us remember that Buffalo was just a few weeks ago. And that young killer had several New Jersey cities that he was ready to attack on his own.
Yeah.
Had he not been taken down in Buffalo, right? The U.S. attorney came into Newark. One of the things that came out of the community's mouth before we even got up is that, you know, what is the government going to do with all of its surveillance capacity to check these white supremacist terrorist groups who are starting to go buck wild in this country?
They're going buck wild. They're definitely going buck wild. It's they're the number, and according to the United States government, they're the number one threat.
That's right.
To the safety. Yeah. The number one terrorist threat is white supremacists.
That's right.
It was a problem after 9/11, but it's as if there were some guardrails in place somewhat up until Trump. And then when Trump kind of let out the Pandora's box of and insanity, it seems like there are no guardrails anymore.
Yeah, he created the environment where it became okay for people to do these specific things. Same way as Elon Musk has taken over Twitter and allowed it okay for everybody to say nigga and all this other kind of stuff, right? So this is the same kind of atmosphere that they've created to make the attacking of us seem like it's populism.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So democracy is me allowing you the ability to defame, demoralize, and hurt Black people under the guise of freedom of speech and democracy. That it becomes populism, racism, and white supremacy becomes populism, and that's exactly what they've done to the culture. So, and ban books in the face of it. So it makes it difficult for small time schools and other places to respond to this without a serious infrastructure around it. That's why the Amsterdam bill in New Jersey becomes that much more important, because it stands in the face of all of the stuff that's going on around the country, where people are making it. You can't even read Maya Angelou or Toni Morrison in some of these places. You know, you can't read. Those books have been taken off the shelves.
Morrison was banned in Westfield, New Jersey.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a few minutes away from us.
Wow.
Right. So
not in Westfield, Mississippi, Westfield, New Jersey.
As a matter of fact, during the gubernatorial campaign, when Murphy ran, the guy Chitterelli at NJPAC talked about critical race theory and us teaching kids things that they shouldn't learn and all this other kind of stuff in New Jersey. Here.
And
so there are enough people who believe that we shouldn't be doing it.
I don't think that we realize it's enough of us are not realizing that it's a problem. Enough so that we can actually start to organize and mobilize around this issue and start to basically have an offensive. And I don't think that we're there yet in terms of really understanding the urgency of dealing with this head on. And coming from, I'm in Georgia right now, and so I'm seeing a lot of stuff, mindsets. It's disturbing to see that we're not really grasping the need to know our history. We're not grasping the need to go and counter these people that are going to the board, these extremists, right-wing extremists that are going to boards and trying to ban books, chase superintendents out of the school districts and teachers out of the school districts because their children are feeling uncomfortable, or they think their children will feel uncomfortable if they learn something about real history and the truth of history. So we have a lot.
And they're very comfortable with being racist.
Right. They're comfortable with being racist.
Very comfortable.
They're very comfortable.
Watch your liberal friends too, because they ain't got a whole lot to say either.
A whole lot to say. So, education itself causes a level of discomfort. First of all, it's supposed to be a little discomforting.
Right. There's no transformation without acknowledgement, and acknowledgement is going to put you through some changes in your feelings. It's supposed to.
Do you remember when Mandela got out of jail and he came and he spoke, and he was in, I think it was in New York, and he dealt with a situation, and he said, you want me to dislike somebody because you don't like them, and I think he was referring to Castro, Yeah. and he dealt with a situation like that. Just because he's not your friend doesn't mean he's not, and the way he dealt with it is like, we're gonna deal with this right now. And we have to be about our business. I'm thinking, Ed, you was just talking about this book right here.
Yeah.
And it talks about how Dr. King's last book and how he left and he went to Jamaica and he put himself in a house and cut himself off, and he left some assignments for us to do. And I know in Pop, one of the things we're talking about is having mandatory reading, and right, and we, some of the things that we have to do mandatory reading and doing some assignments on our own outside of, as we come to the table and have our meetings and something. So,
but Donna, that's how we became conscious in the 90s, right? We became because we had those mandatory readings, right? We had brothers on campus running around with books in their hand, and we were reading them, and then we would get together and discuss those books, right?
That's right.
I mean, and that was why, you had Public Enemy became as big as they were, because they had all of the brothers and sisters on campus like us. We were reading them books, and that was rubbing off in the music, right?
Yeah.
So it was got hold of them. That's what happened to them.
But the bottom line is that we've sort of gotten away from that, right?
No, that's right. That's right. We had a whole book list.
Yes, yeah, right. That's right.
Right. And then what we had, and if y'all all remember, then what we had the professors who would the writers of those books who would actually come into the community, right?
Yeah.
And we would be able to talk with them and have conversations with them.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
That was the beauty of all of that.
That's right.
And
it's a lot of speaking and not enough investigation.
Yeah. And man, that's what your mother quoted when she was at the library last month. She talked about that in terms of being able to understand around politics and voting. But you gotta do the research, man. You gotta do the books.
Yeah, she turned it up too. She turned it up too. Yeah.
I'll see what that's where it is for you. Man, when you was at that with Dr. Gates, you said the problem is we leave politics to the politicians, and then you said something else. Yeah, we have to be about community, and we have to. TJ Whitaker, he's doing it right now. We need to replicate what TJ is doing in Orange, East Orange, Irvington, and Newark, and we have to get it. If we weren't able to do that, we would move the needle so much further.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
But I tell you, man, what and I shared this with you, man. Years ago, man, when I was a kid, man. Because I had a principal named Eugene Campbell, right? Back in the day at Robert Treat, and I had somebody teaching African classes named Imamu Baraka. All of that made a difference in my life as a child, man. And having Eugene Campbell's sisters who were my teachers, all of that made a difference because they didn't. If there was somebody who said, "Oh, you couldn't teach Black history," those Black folks didn't give a damn about that because they was
doing it before the law.
Private treat the Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, Marcus Garvey. Right. They was doing it before the law.
Right. So I'm like, we've sort of got to get back, because I even remember, look, man, we've kind of got to get back to understanding that it is, if we're gonna save the lives of these children, we can't worry about being politically correct all the time.
That's right.
We just can't worry about that, man. And if you got 10 and 11th and 12th graders, 16 and 17-year-olds who are saying, that they're being discriminated against. What the hell? In a Black city? Are you
discriminated? They're being attacked. It's different. You know what I mean? They're being attacked, outright. People saying stuff to them, One kid said they had an assignment, they had to get up in front of the class and talk about the foods that they eat and how it's made. And the kids were in the a classroom like yelling out watermelon, chicken, stuff like that.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is 2022.
Yeah, that's what they was doing.
In Newark.
In Newark, New Jersey. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yo,
And, and nobody thought that was enough. I said, did they have a convocation? Did they have a meeting? Did people bring people together? They said they didn't do anything until last week. And because last week, because a lot more parents started getting involved in it. So now the principal had something a week ago to address something that's been happening for over a year.
What school district? This was in Newark, but what
global studies. But I'm gonna tell you, that's not the only place that people are saying things. That's just the most extreme situation. I mean, a couple of years ago we had an issue at Science High, so
right. And the sad part about it, let's talk about watermelon, the perfect fruit. Let's talk about it. Like now, watermelon. I mean, you let's talk about the bluest, the blue side. These things that are good and great for us, we're going to start being made to feel that they're bad for us. For a person who can't drink water, you can get everything you can out of just eating a slice of watermelon. So, this.
But the ignorance is that all of them eat watermelon. But the ignorance is that the people who are saying this stuff are also the victims of hatred and white supremacy.
Absolutely.
Man,
absolutely. We talk about kids. That's absolutely.
Apparently, they're doing a good job at their living room tables. It's still, we need to get together at our living room, at our dinner tables. Yeah,
we need to have citywide, statewide. We need to start again talking about culture and history and even these black and brown, conventions and unity meetings. We got to start talking about that stuff again. Because you should feel stupid to say things like that, right? People should feel like, why are you saying that? The people should be isolated for those kind of comments here, and retaught, in this place, in this space, because we can't, like, you go around advocating that our schools and their resources are integrated, are diverse, and in your town you having these problems, You see, the problem with these school system is that the positions are diverse, but the power is not.
Having grown up in Ivy Hill, Mount Vernon, going to Mount Vernon school, at the time I was dealing with a lot of racism growing up. It was a very, interestingly enough, multicultural area with people from all over the world basically congregated in that space. And it's still somewhat like that today.
Yeah.
We dealt with a lot of racism growing up in that area. And it's just, we always realized as kids, as children, that when we heard someone make a racist remark, we would address it because we were outspoken like that, but we also realized that was not coming necessarily from them,
right?
From their parents.
Absolutely.
Right. That was something that they heard from their parents.
Sure.
We heard, certain remarks being made. And it's like, well, they didn't come up with that from a vacuum. They got that from somewhere.
But that's what the mayor was saying, right? That these kids ain't just getting this out of a vacuum. They're hearing that from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have to call the parents to
task. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's also the school district's job to put that down.
That's right.
To re-educate people and so if something like that happens and I'm the principal, everybody should be in the auditorium immediately.
It's a teachable moment.
There's opportunity for us to bring speakers in, to do all kind of things. And we're going to do it for the whole month or so until this thing is resolved. We're going to keep doing it.
That's right.
We're going to keep doing it. Right. And keep talking about it and keep raising it and creating opportunities for people to interact and discuss these kinds of things. You have to do it. Because if you don't address it, then you make the kids who did it feel like it's okay to do that, and the kids who become the victims of it feel like that they deserve to be the victims of that.
And what you get, man, is exactly what we got, right? The kids being attacked. That's what we
Yeah.
get because the adults in the room aren't standing up and doing anything about it. So
That's right.
They
And
cope
maybe,
and make
Baraka,
think
I'm
that is-
sorry. And before you leave, one of the things,
Yeah.
there was a brilliant, I don't know, experiment or story that was told that was true, the Freedom Riders that happened. And I remember we were captured on a plane coming from somewhere, and everybody watched this movie, and the plane was completely silent of how this teacher had these students who were quote unquote bad, but they
Yeah.
were just challenged, but they were made to experience each other's experiences, and the result are these kids are traveling all over the world today, speaking, changing lives. And you know, and that's what needs to be done. That right there was what she saw. She took that class and helped them experience each other. It was wow.
That definitely needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're asking the adults to agree with that, because therein lies what the real issue is.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. They have to approve it. They got to get the resources, all of that. That's what you call commitment.
Yeah, and
see now, and her the pressure was up against that principal getting those resources, but she fought. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right. And what happens to the kid like that's suspended for that when they go home? What's the response? You know, and parents have to be reaching out to other parents, and all of that stuff has to happen. We can't allow this to continue to fester, because it turns into stuff that is highly detrimental to all of us.
That's right. Get wild. Yeah, get wild. Yeah.
And then for the science, you know, we need to talk about this more. I just happened to come upon this Netflix series, Raising Dion, and how they were telling these stories, but through a sci-fi story. And it was brilliant, but it was still stories about racism and hate and stuff like that. And I got to go back and watch it because I'm not a science person, but I was like, wow. You know, brilliant the way they did that in Raising Dion. But just so many ways that we could do this, and we just have to do it.
Yep. I got to check out, fellas, ladies.
Yeah.
So,
we're not going to see you again to 2023 on these airways.
Yeah.
So what's your last
holidays?
What's your last charge for us, man, Baraka?
I pray y'all get into 2023 a whole 6 months before the devil find out you there. But,
we're praying for you and your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. Sending prayers over you and the family.
Yeah. Thank you.
We appreciate
I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for coming through. Love you, my brother.
Love you too. Take care.
Right, man. Peace.
All right, beloved. All right.
I tell you, you know,
you just heard an education mayor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that one thing is for sure, you know, is that, you know, we're gonna be up against it in 2023, right? And I don't think that none of us need to, you know, go to sleep. And unfortunately, you know, I know y'all not gonna want to hear this, but we're the elders in the room now, right?
They've been calling me Baba since my 40s.
Baba.
I said, already? Wait a minute.
And I think that we've got to come to the reality that you know, what are we going to do on our watch? Because listen, man, we at the halfway mark, right? And some of us are beyond the halfway mark.
I went to a funeral and pastor said, when you wake up and you know you got more days behind you than you got in front of you. You know. And as Joe Madison say, you start laying out all these problems. Joe Madison's like, what are you gonna do about it? Yeah, but what do you know, Joe Madison, he's at that age where, you know, like the patience is limited, and he'd be like, well, tell me what you gonna do about it. I heard the problem. I know the problem. What are you gonna do? I love it's funny to be in a car with somebody listening to Joe Madison. They'd be like, why is he so? I was like, listen, Joe Madison ain't 20 years. He's like, time is of the essence. Stop talking about it and tell me, what are you gonna do about it?
So I'm going to remove myself from this point, and then I'll come back when in the next segment.
Okay. Will you still be able to control?
We'll be on doing that. Absolutely.
Okay. Gotcha.
Ed looked like he was handling it, but I've got it.
Okay. Okay.
Jonathan
And
gave another mission.
I see Mike Barbee's in the
I don't see
studio.
it.
I don't see him in the room, I guess you would
Yes,
say,
his
but
camera's not working.
okay. And he has somebody coming on. Would you see?
The
Oh, there's Bob. Okay. And now
How's
we got
everybody tonight?
Go ahead and
okay.
introduce-
Okay. Oh, we are here. Nothing
Good
like
evening.
this.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Good to be with everybody.
Good evening.
Sure.
I see
did you
familiar
guys-
faces.
Did you guys get to hear any part of the mayor segment? Did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Some parts.
So
I did
Go
hear
ahead.
the last 10 minutes, and I have to agree with Mr. Riley. Sadly, I'm an elder.
okay. And so we have William Mike Barbee and Bob Davidson, and we've invited them on to talk about the state of our mental health. Again, the mayor started is something when our program just automatically just start coming together. But the mayor talked about having young people come in his office and talk about how they are being put through harsh situations and they're feeling some type of way. But on a national front, we just had one of our premier DJs who worked for the Ellen Show, which is now off the air, for whatever reason, left his house, went, checked himself in a hotel, and we learned that he took a gun to his head and killed himself. This is a young man that was 40 years old, and whatever problems he had, he did not see a tomorrow in those problems. With that being said, Mike Barbee, you are in the mental health field. You became a part of that field because of personal situation, and you turned around and took that personal situation and began to work through it and then work in that situation. And now you're through the arts and through other different venues, you're trying to tell us how to deal with mental health. And then you can interview your guest, Bob, and tell us why Bob is here. Mike?
Davis.
First, let me say thank you to you, Councilwoman Williams, to my two brothers here. Thank you for having us. Bob, thank you for joining and agreeing to partner on this. Let me start by phrasing it from my background as a former consumer of mental health services. I, too, was suicidal at one point. Had counseling at the age of 20 to 22. Started learning the tools for living after coming from a deep, dark area of my existence. And as a result of all of that, with the counseling, learning tools to live, my life has gone up and forward. One of the things I just never forgot was the give back. Often we rise to these levels of sustainability. We start living, less functioning, but more living. We find our purpose, and my purpose was found in the very things that held me back, which was my mental wellness, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideations. And so in giving back, I started a mental health clinic, substance abuse clinic, joined organizations, particularly Mental Health Association, which Bob Davidson, who I invited tonight, is the executive director, nationally renowned individual in the mental health arena as an executive. So I brought him on, and I'm the board secretary of that organization. So it's imperative that we do have this dialogue. It's imperative that we start the discussion and not just wait for a celebrity to face an unfortunate end. But, I make it a point in my mission daily to speak life over everyone and to speak to the positive energy. Often we spend time ridiculing and really bashing people rather than promoting the good. there are many signs, and I'm sure Bob can go into that. I'll speak briefly to some. When individuals are going through, when you see a shift in behavior, when you see dietary issues, when they lose weight, gain weight, their mood changes. When you see these things happening, it's important that we reach out. And so let me just do that and now introduce Bob. Let Bob introduce himself, rather. Here you go, Bob Davison. Thank you for coming.
Mike, thank you very much for inviting me. Councilwoman, gentlemen, it's good to be with you. As Mike said, my name is Bob Davison, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Mental Health Association. We were founded in the great city of Newark in 1950, and we've grown over the last 73 years, and we currently provide mental health services across the continuum in 5 counties throughout North Jersey. So that's a little bit about me and the organization that I run. I also happen to be a licensed professional counselor, pardon me. And I could tell you that mental illnesses are real. More times than not, they have a biological component. Depression is real. More times than not, it has a biological component. So that's neither the good news or the bad news. That's just the news. But the good news is that treatment is available, services are available, and recovery is possible. As Mike knows, because Mike walked that walk, recovery is possible. And the reason I always take every opportunity to do these type of shows is that the number one barrier to treatment services in our country, I believe, is the stigma associated with mental illness.
Exactly.
Oftentimes people are simply ashamed of the condition that they're in, and as a result of that, are unwilling to seek help. I think the number 2 barrier to mental health services is healthcare disparities and access to healthcare, and we can talk about that as well if you would like. But Michael spoke about some of the signs of depression, and if you can't sleep, if you sleep too much, if you begin to lose interest in daily activities, if you have a difficult time concentrating, if you become irritable, if you start to overeat or start to eat much less, if you begin to abuse substances, particularly if that wasn't your MO prior to feeling depression, these are all earmarks of depression. And it needs to be taken seriously, because unfortunately and tragically, as the councilwoman referenced earlier, the gentleman who was only 40 years old who completed a suicide. That's tragic, because in my judgment, that was preventable had he got the right treatment and the right services. So it's important that we keep an eye on ourselves, an eye on our loved ones, and an eye on our greater community, so we can get them the services that they need.
Bob, can I ask you a question? Because I think that one of the things the mayor talked about, and I agree, and I think that everybody on this show, even Mike, I'm sure would agree with us as well. In the Black community, right, it's just not cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're suffering. How do we, and I know that you started this organization in Newark. How do we because everything's got to be kind of sexy and cool for young Black folk, and then for some Black folk period to even get involved in. How do we begin to make it cool for our people to be willing to talk to a therapist, right? Be willing to just have a conversation and say, I'm not feeling like I want to be here anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, first, let me state the obvious. I'm not Black. Right? So I hesitate. Yeah. So I hesitate to speak with any expertise, but I will give you my opinion. My grandparents on my father's side, they were Irish immigrants. All right. Frankly, they would have sooner set themselves on fire than seek out mental health services. It just wasn't who they were. It wasn't who they were culturally, and it wasn't where they were from. Good people, smart people, but it was just a foreign language to them. So 2 generations later, I am and was willing to seek mental health services. So when I think about communities of color, particularly African American community, that's not a community that's been treated well by the institutions in this country for the last 400 years.
That's right.
So some of the skepticism about seeking out services, particularly from institutions and from professionals, is warranted. I haven't lived it, but I get it. So I think the way to deal with that is the fact that leaders in the community like yourselves, particularly earlier with the mayor on the show and the councilwoman now, being willing to speak about it, being willing to talk about it and bring the message to the young people. And then furthermore, to the extent that we can identify younger people in the African American community or any community for that matter, but you asked specifically about the African American community, to the extent that we could recruit younger people that are willing to talk about their experiences, of course, their experiences in experiencing mental health difficulties, but more importantly, their experience in recovery and their story of hope.
Let me build on that question, because I come from a lot of places that are directly related to this. I lost a brother-in-law to suicide. Have a daughter that's going through some very real changes, and COVID was an accelerant for some really serious challenges for those of our kids who are very young. I have a daughter who's a social worker and is in the vanguard of a lot of this work here in Newark. And one of my personal missions is to try and get Black and brown men to come into the field. But the question I want to ask is this: where are the needs to create within those institutions that provide mental health services and that train mental health professionals? Where are those buttons to push that actually brings, that intention with real intentionality brings young men of color into the field so they can be the agents of healing that young men in their communities need? We just
right. So let me address that. And first, let me acknowledge this. Our field, and I'm proud that the Mental Health Association, with Michael Barbee and other people's help, but our field has done a horrendous job of recruiting people of color to be professionals and being intentional about it. And we've done a particularly bad job recruiting people of color and frankly African Americans who happen to be male. For whatever reason, we haven't been the most inviting community for those folks. So we need to do a better job of that. But the mental health community on our own, we can't do it by ourselves, right? We need the help of all communities. We need the help of government, and we need the help of the clergy too. The Black church remains an essential institution in the Black community and in the United States. So to the extent that all the leaders in the mental health community and all the leaders in the African American community could actively speak to young people and young men in particular, if we think they have the aptitude and the willingness to do it, say, hey, come on over and be willing to work with us as we work with people with mental health communities, both in our own community and in the greater community. I mean, I get a call from time to time from an African American family that understandably their 16-year-old adolescent boy is having difficulties. And they say, geez, it'd be great if he can meet, with an African American male psychiatrist. I can't find one.
It's interesting.
Mike,
I
just want to ask you a question on that for you, right? Because you're in the community, Mike. You know what I mean? And have you thought about, Mike, like maybe doing some community meetings around, trying to, because Mike, it's embarrassing to tell somebody you having some problems, right? That's one. Two, it's being able to trust people, right? That you can tell somebody, you're really struggling. And what I'm hearing from some people in the music industry was that was one of the issues that Twitch was having. And I'm saying to you, Mike, in the community, how would you, my brother, get our community to be willing to have that conversation without people doing what TD Jake said? Once you tell them stuff, they automatically go out and say, oh, it's between me and you. Now everybody in the community know, oh, this guy went and talked to so-and-so, or he's struggling, thinking about committing suicide. How do we do that, Mike?
Well, one of the
Before
things.
you answer that, let me help you.
Right.
I'm going to help you with the answer, right? Because as an organizer, that's my responsibility to do that.
Yes,
I
sir.
want everybody to know that, and this is a part of the vision of our mayor who just finished that last conversation, that there's a very real serious effort to create a community-based anti-violence intervention ecosystem in Newark that is going in the correct direction, right? Developed for the most part at critical points of violence intervention by credible messengers of men and women who have, in the language of the streets, been there and done that, right? Well, so there's a place here in Newark in particular to help build on that, right? One of the things that coming back to my question that I asked Bob is that we still need some more support to bring those players who are willing to do that on the ground grind work, which is quite dangerous because they're first responders in a very real way, right? But to also be able to take their training and retraining and recovery and redemption to those next steps. There is an environment that we have here. I just co-hosted a virtual forum with Toby Sanders, who works directly with the Newark Community Street team, right? Tawana Thompson, a conscious young pastor also here in Newark, and Reverend Charles Boyer of Salvation and Social Justice, who just started a street team in Trenton. So there are spaces where we can build with my brother, and I want to commend him also, and I put it in the chat, right? The film that he did, right? He didn't grow up becoming a filmmaker, but taking his own story personally, right? He went and stepped out on a limb to use a vehicle that popularizes behavior with the creation of that film. So in your response, I want you to, I'm giving you stuff to pull off.
And that's exactly what I wanted to get at with Mike, right? Did we lose him?
Oh man, we lost him.
Come on back, Mike. But that film, until Mike gets back, that film that Mike made was extraordinary. And I recall about 5 or 6 years ago, he did a screening down at the Newark Museum.
That's right.
And Mike had about 700 people there,
most
of which were either from Newark or the greater Newark community.
That's right. It was a full
so
house.
That film and what Mike had to say that evening, that carried the message in a more effective way than I could have, for example.
And that's why I think Mike would be the appropriate brother to help us at this point.
And
well, let me try to go back. Wait, before we have too much input and before I get kicked out again, let me try to give some active role that I, along with others, particularly people of color, can play. And I don't want it to be lost in the idea that mental health or mental illness is relegated to color. What we can say is that the African American experience, or the experience of Africans in America, has been different than any other ethnicity. We can fairly say that. And so we have unaddressed trauma and drama that has been generationally passed down that has never been addressed. And so the perspective that we see mental health or mental health related services is different. And so Bob alluded to it earlier with regards to the trust issue with institutions, rightfully so. When we look at law enforcement, rightfully so, we have trust issues because we understand how policing was founded. We understand the experimentation. We could look at Fannie Lou Hamer. She was experimenting with the sterilization of women. And so Blacks in particular, people of color in particular in America, have distrust. So what I've done for my platform, beyond just the movies on mental health or being just the advocate, I opened up a substance misuse and mental health clinic. I commend Mayor Baraka, my brother. I commend him for the work that he's doing and the initiatives he's pushing forward. And it takes platforms like this. It takes faith-based, not just the church, but the church has been the foundation in the Black community, but it also takes faith-based organizations across the board to be intentional about representation. And let me say this lastly, I'm finishing up graduate school right now. Here it is, I've done all this stuff successful. I decided to go back so that those little brown girls and boys can see me as their counselor before them. But let me say this. I remember when I was hospitalized back when I was 20. And, I was shut down completely. I didn't ask for a therapist. In order to move forward back then, you needed to have one. You needed a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And I'm thinking that, someone would look like me who would speak to me, but it was a 4'11" chain smoking Jewish woman with an afro, feminist, who gave me the tools for living. Mm-hmm. And if I can be an example in that aspect to say that it's beyond just color, but it's important that people see us. Healing can come in any way, but we have to establish in therapeutic environment is trust. And so we have to have trusted environments, trusted communities. We need to build within our community, and not just the African American community, but all communities, but inside of Newark and all these other towns, communities where people can speak openly, but yet in private, closed group sessions to get the narrative. And so it takes initiative like you're doing tonight. It's a wonderful thing, and you should be applauded for it. But yet, while applauding you, it's your responsibility. And it's our responsibility to speak life over this stuff. We have to be intentional about everything that we're doing.
Yep, but that's it though, Mike. What I said to Bob, right? It is about trust, right? Because you got to be able to trust somebody, when you going through that type of pain, right? And know that they're not going to take that and misuse that or go and publicize that in a way, right, that is going to hurt you. Right? You think about what the man said. He said there are kids who got an entire suicide plan written out. Think about that. I mean, how could that even be, Mike? We're talking about children, man. How in the hell can that be? And you're telling me that there's nobody in the inner circle that these children can trust, that they can go to and sit down and have a conversation? There's no trusted adult nowhere, right? That you can have a conversation with and be able to say what it is you're going through, what it is you're really feeling. And I think that, I don't know the backstory behind Twitch, but if we know anything, we know that there was not a confidant to the point where he could go to somebody and be able to have that conversation. And somebody said sort of the same thing about Robin Williams, right? When he took his life, right? Even though he might have been dealing with some sort of illness, but there was not somebody in his circle that he could trust, that he could go and have that conversation. Because and I'll just being honest with myself, Mike. There's not a lot of people that I my spiritual father, he calls it your inner court, right? There's not a lot of people you can go and share your inner court with and be able to say you're vulnerable. Especially
so let's explore why. Let's explore why in just a normal dialogue with a group of 4 men here. And let's explore the possibility of changing that direction. Do we hold each other accountable? Are we intentional going outside of what's familiar to us to speak to people who may not look and or sound like us? Do we make it an initiative as part of our daily affirmations to speak life over someone or to reach out with someone in positive, not even asking them for anything? Do we set the stage for people to feel safe and comfortable? And until we start addressing those things, we'll continue to have a lot of gaps. We have to also look at social media and the impact social media plays in this dynamic. We have to look at bullying. We have to look at social factors. We have to look at physiological factors, chemical factors. All of these factors play into it. And I hope we don't spend the time talking specifically or theorizing about what happened with Twitch. It's an unfortunate thing, but this is happening every day in America. It is happening every day in urban populations. And I think our narrative should also, yes, we mentioned Twitch, it opens the conversation, but we have to be intentional going back to what you were saying, Brother Ed. When do we come together to be in that community where those young boys and girls can talk to us? Mm-hmm. And it's not just young, because look at the senior citizen population. They're seeing more deaths than anything. in their community. Just imagine what our parents have gone through. I could look at in my generation, COVID has had a major impact. You have these environmental things. COVID led me to write 2 complete books while in graduate school.
Go ahead.
2 complete books, 71,000 words on one and 50 something. Bob wrote the foreword in one of the books and 50 something thousand in the other. It was because I didn't know anything really about anxieties, but I know I lost weight. I didn't realize I wasn't eating.
I actually put on weight. COVID had me
It goes
crazy.
both ways, unfortunately. Yeah.
Right. It goes both ways.
That's right.
And so at what point do we as men come together to keep that palette open? When do my affirmations in the morning is to speak life over everybody?
Wow.
Because I know in order to establish trust with anyone, because my phone, every day I get 2 to 3 messages. Mike, that was a powerful message from last week. Mike, I enjoyed what you said this morning. It's opening up a stage. So yes, now we come back to where Brother Ed was talking earlier. Now, where's the platform? Where do we go from here? And I think that's where all of us have to come together and be intentional. If the mayor has a good program, yes. I'm the board secretary of the organization, 400 employees that Bob is the executive director of. So maybe there's a relationship that is forged to be the support from the professional end, to allow people in the community, the faith-based leaders, the political leaders, to bring more resources to these environments. We have to be willing to be intentional. But what I find is that we just wrap ourselves around a big event and then it disappears.
Right.
But that pain never goes away, because I know being successful and being a suicide survivor, I was smiling like everyone else. And it wasn't a matter of, oh, I couldn't talk to this one or I couldn't talk to that one. That wasn't the issue for me. It's beyond that. It was more how I saw myself. And so if I had the positivity and the positive energy that was continuous in my life, if I wasn't dealing with the self-hate, and where did that come from? If I wasn't dealing with the depression, where did that come from? Or what were the anxieties really based upon? Where was the fear? And until I set the stage where my whole aura can speak to love, can speak to peace of mind, spirituality, when all those things, listen, I just finished a course in graduate school, and it was on spirituality. And it talked about how God shaped Moses, Paul, Jesus, and David for leadership. And it shaped it through 6 C's, through their commonplace, their community, their culture, the call, conflict, and with communion. And if we apply those things to our daily existence, you'll be surprised the power that positive energy has in everyone's life. You'll be surprised at the love that comes. But we have to be willing. That's what we as men have to do. We have to break down these barriers that keep us from supporting.
We have to model the behaviors we want the young people to
exactly.
Right.
We have to live it. We can't talk it. We have to live it. We have to live this stuff. And that's really where I'm at. I'm just about that living. You know, I don't want just a one-off platform. Twix died. Yeah, but I think about Don Cornelius. I think about Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade. I think about a whole lot
a while ago. That's right.
Yes, I think about a whole lot of people. And so I'm just a little sensitive about this. There's no excuse for my passion, but this is what I live. And I'm very passionate about it because it's real for me. And it's sad to know that someone took their life, but people are doing it every day. And before we can even talk about taking your life, let's look at all these other stresses that people are up against. And it starts with us, and especially Black men. We have to come together. We have to learn to support one another. We fail in that area often. Let's be real with this.
Oh, yeah.
How often do we encourage one another? How often, me and Brother Muhammad talk, but how often do we speak life into each other's existence? How often? Not enough.
Right.
Not enough.
Right. I think the only place we see real genuine love, right, is when we go to church, when you see the pastor say, turn around and hug somebody, hug 2 or 3 people, right, that you don't know, right? We don't do that. Imagine this, if you will, just based around what you just said, Brother Mike. Imagine if you walked on a bus and all of a sudden you just reached out and just started hugging 3 people that you didn't know, and that became contagious, right, in our community, right? Imagine, you know, but that would be around what Jesus would do, right? Because it's walking in love and hugging people and just being in love. But we're dealing with all those other issues though, Mike. I think that and somehow we've got to be we've got to, so you know, because you know there was a in 2020, before the pandemic started, we had this conversation with the mayor and the mayor's forum, and we were talking about why was it, you know, back when hip hop started, why is it that all of the hip hop artists used to walk around and look like they were mad all the time, right? You know, just wouldn't smile, and that became contagious with all these little young boys just creating this false bravado, right? And now what we're talking about is we're talking about, you know, a lot of our community, right, that are in pain, but we don't know how to speak to each other. We don't know how to reach out to each other, you know, and we most certainly don't know how to have conversations with each other.
Let
Right?
me ask this, brother, and brother Muhammad, because both of you have social media present. When was the last time you were on social media and you just talked about something being beautiful, pretty, nice? That had nothing to do. Like, come on, brother Muhammad is always out there, going at it.
Yeah.
But when have you
I'm
shown?
throwing rocks the other
When
way.
have you shown? Either of you shown that vulnerable side, brother?
Yeah.
Ed, you're always on this forefront on this whole thing with politics and this and that. When have you shown that vulnerable side so that we're demonstrating, as Bob said, demonstrate the behavior we want others to emulate?
I think that's
one space
I
that
think that's I think that's a good point, Bob.
Yeah.
You know, when he said that, you know, that you know, we ought to show our authentic self, right? You know, so that other people, because you know, but for me, Mike, I think what I would, and I would say I haven't done that right recently, but what I would say is that part of that is my fear of not being taken seriously, right?
But I push back on that. I
Yeah.
think you'll be taken more seriously when you show your vulnerability.
Mm.
Listen,
And if you're hiding
yeah, that's
vulnerability
important.
from an audience you're expecting trust, it's hard to gain the trust. Now you may get passion and pushback because you're not showing, you're showing that bravado for the moment. But I'm here to tell you, you cry just as I.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
bleed red, you doodle brown, and you pee yellow, just as I.
Right.
We all do it together. So
But check this
we all
out.
cry.
Yeah, but to your point, check this out. I literally had to work when COVID hit me. It beat the hell out of me, right? It beat the hell out of me like a Joe Frazier body beating, and this brother knows what I'm talking about because we're both ex-fighters, right? But I had to work through it. I had if you would look at how I looked on this platform, doing the shows, trying to do shows through all that madness I was going through, it was, you know, it took me to look at that to see how vulnerable I was. I did it and didn't even realize that I was doing it, right? And I don't feel bad about it, right? And I actually got some support with the next job that I took. I work with a group of some fascinating young people at Equal Justice USA who build the question of wellness into the very cultural makeup of their work environment. Most of us don't know what the hell that is. And I said, y'all really do that stuff? Really? I said, well, you know, I'm probably crazy as hell. I'm going to give you a lot of laughs and I'm going to need a lot of help, but right on.
Now add intentionality with your vulnerability. Add intentionality with your vulnerability.
Yes, that's right. Right.
Be intentional about being vulnerable.
I agree with you.
Because and going back to, we talk about the hip hop, right? Our generation was the beginning of all of that stuff. You know, back in 1979. Come on.
That's
you know,
right.
we ran in the house to see hip hop, hibbity, hip. What is it? Sugar Hill. They run the news, 6 o'clock news. They're going to be on at 11. And we see these guys from what? Inglewood, New Jersey, hip hop, hibbity. And so as it's gone on, things have changed. Back then, let's look at what was going on. We didn't have the computer like this here. We had a side A and a side B, floppy disk, right? Then something comes around. We didn't have cell phones. We had the rotary dials, right? And so you have bullying that occurred then, but you have bullying that occurs now. So now it takes on the technology that has going at a faster rate than our ability to adjust to the social issues and concerns. And so where we fail to do is to keep up the other part as society, as technology has soared. And so now the question is, how do we catch up now? And that's what I keep hearing. How do we catch up now in so many words? And it has to be with some levels of intentionality here, with us being vulnerable, because we know good and well, when we fought in the street, we didn't use no gun. We used our hands.
That's right.
That's what we fought with.
Yeah.
But the kids today, they'll pick up a gun, or they'll go on social media and brag about who they did and how they did down in Georgia. They're trying to try these kids on lyrics. These kids ain't no gangsters. You know, you hit one. If one of you guys hit them one time, they'll feel it. You know what I'm saying? They'll cry. But what it does, it gives those people who have other issues going on a false sense of security. That's what this computer offers. It gives them confidence. It's like what alcohol does to some folks, give them that truth serum. And so when they have that, they could turn it up to be worse. I just ran for council in West Orange. And I had a bout up there in West Orange running for council, but I enjoyed it. But there were a few residents, man. You could tell that probably when they were children, they were bullied. So what do they do on the computer? They use it as a bully platform. And so how do you turn that around? You have to show that that's not going to bother you, because once you start feeding into that crap, you become a part of that problem. So we can feed into love, feed into positivity, feed into being intentional about organizing beyond just this platform and supporting the mayor and creating, because the mayor's narrative is different than someone else's narrative. There are many ways to skin this chicken, but the goal is that we're all moving forward in a direction where we're being intentional about helping our brothers and sisters. And it's not, and I must say, it's not economics, it's not race. While the experience of Black people, race has been a factor when it comes to institutions and trust. But mental health and wellness has nothing to do with those things. It has everything to do with how we feel about ourselves. Those environmental issues, those trust factors, that trust is the main thing that you need in service of healing and changing. You have to want to change. Change is the agent. Right. And so until we get to the point, as leaders in our community, as people of color who understand the Black experience here in America, we have to be intentional about showing the other side. Like I remember going to Japan, fighting martial arts, me and John Arnold. John Arnold was my sensei, going to Germany. And so we do full contact martial arts, but people don't know that that's what I did for years, because I say, hey, they see Mike Barbee, hey, how you doing? Or I may show a flower, or I may talk about the birds and talk about nature. But when are you going to be intentional? When are either of you guys going to be in? Let's come on.
I'm in a new space where I'm doing that, right? And that can be a follow-up thing that we can talk about doing together in some places that I can actually bring you into where that's happening, right?
There you go.
Let's get to that. So we can definitely ride on that. We're starting to come to the close of our segment, so we're going to flip the script and ask y'all a very important question. Very important. Very. Yeah, go ahead and answer.
So Mike, you spoke to this, and Bob, you going to get a chance to come second. You spoke to this. So, we are a political hip hop radio talk show. You've been with us in the studio over the years. So what are you currently listening to, Mike, in the hip hop field that encourages you, that keep you walking in love, or keep you feeling happy about yourself?
When you say hip hop, man, I look at it broader than I look at it more generational than just a type of music. There's a young brother who's around 28 years old. His name is Louis Sky. Louis Sky is one of the baddest boys out there when it comes to vocals.
Okay.
Louis, Lewis, Sky, SKY. Or you could turn to David Michael Wyatt. That's more of what I listen to get me moving. I've always been a big fan of Jay-Z and the rest of those guys, but Jay-Z don't have any. Well, actually, I think he's coming out with something new now.
Jay-Z, Nas, and Rakim just came out with something new.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of those cats. So I stick to old heads, man. I'm still with KRS, man. I'm still on that kick, man. You know, I listen to this young stuff, man. I'm like, hey, man, give me KRS-One or somebody from back then.
Yeah, listen, man. You know the mayor's right here. You ask the mayor what he's listening to. You know, he's listening to some of their old hip hop. So,
Yeah.
Bob, unfortunately, you got a chance to hear it, so you know what the sneak question is now.
Well, I have to be honest. I'm more a Sarah Vaughan, Frank Sinatra guy myself.
That's all right.
Did Frank ever do a rap?
I was a jazz DJ when I was at Rutgers North.
WBJO, that's still one of my stations of choice. But when I was younger, I did see Run DMC in concert and the Beastie Boys, and you know my kids were certainly into a hip hop, but I'd be inauthentic if I claimed to be listening to the more recent hip hop artists.
Well, tell your kids you did good. Run DMC and the Beastie Boys are good. So
they were.
And I have to apologize. My phone went down and I had to go to T-Mobile, so I apologize. But I'm sure that's why we have a team, so that you were able to do what you came to do. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for bringing them on, Donna. Even though in your absence, it was a very, very good.
Mike has been with us before, but he was in studio.
I know, but it's been a while.
Yeah. He did one of the end of the year shows.
Let me say this before we close out. I would be remiss if I didn't just reinforce things dealing with mental health and wellness, and particularly as we did see this latest thing with Twitch, Boss. But there are so many signs out here. Bob and I spoke about it earlier, that you can look for with your loved ones or people. But I just believe that we have to start with ourselves and mimicking those things that we want to see so that they are repeated. And then it spreads like wildfire. So being intentionally kind, forgiveness of self, forgiving others, love self, loving others. And we have to lead with that. And again, as Donna, while you were gone, Councilwoman, she's my cousin. So Councilwoman, while you were gone, you know, we had a very robust conversation with Bob and Brother Muhammad and Brother Ed. But I said to all of them, when have you last been intentional about being vulnerable?
That's right. Ed, do I have time for one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, I don't know if you talked about being on the board at East Orange General. East Orange General, the new name of the hospital, they still should have left the East Orange General in there, but that's another conversation. But they had probably in the 80s, the crisis center was a very active crisis center for our community. I'll just leave that there. I hope that was something that is still there as they transferred ownership, because when it was in its 80s, it really did the work the community needed and we need it today. And I don't know if Ed referred you to the conversation that Mayor Baraka talked about, young students coming in and being bullied right here in Newark and not being heard. And that's where we have to be intentional. These things are not happening only on the West Coast or national TV. They're happening right here in our community. Right. And we have to get in our schools. And a couple of weeks ago, we had one of our, Dr. Brown, she said, we have not begun to see the fallout from COVID yet. And the Mental Health Association, I know there's an office in Montclair, I think you said started in Newark. Are we preparing for this fallout? Are we ready for our babies, our seniors, for everybody? Are we ready to deal with what's coming?
Yeah, I would say we're very much preparing for it. We anticipate the third wave of the pandemic, which is going to be mental health and substance abuse and the like. But the one thing I don't buy and won't buy is this thing that the young people today are a lost generation. We cannot accept that. We cannot say that these young people are going to be a lost generation. So as the adult community, we need to be there for them and to provide the support that they need in regards to their anxiety, their depression, their substance abuse, so on and so forth. And that's one of the reasons I'm always anxious to do shows like this, so we can continue to carry the message.
And if you have a number or a contact you can drop in the chat that we can put up on our page, please do before you leave, so that we can in the chat, so that we can hopefully,
I'm doing it right now.
if anybody's listening, because this goes on replay, it's on YouTube, that when people go back to replay, that we can put the information up so they'll have it if they need help.
And also remember the crisis line, suicide, which is 988 for emergency.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Ed.
We definitely appreciate you and Mike taking time out your schedule to come on.
Very good.
Appreciate it. And Mike, the big takeaway for me tonight is being willing to be vulnerable, right?
Yes,
and not be afraid. So thank you, man. I appreciate that contribution into my life tonight, my brother.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be with you.
You'll be back.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bob.
All right, y'all. That was a deep segment there.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Have you had the opportunity to see this film that he did?
Oh yeah.
Huh?
You seen the film? Did you see the film, Ed?
I was there. We showed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see? It was at the Newark Film Fest. Maybe we have to do something to bring it back, because he really. What's good about it, and I know, Zay, you're an actor, that people will really identify with this film because it's done right in our community, and you'll see East Orange General, and you'll see people that you know, and that makes people more, to look at it. But it's a very good film. And we have our babies here from our community. We're moving on to our next segment.
They're in the fight right now. They ain't babies.
And they'll always be but listen, we are the elders now. We are.
Fatima.
So you want to set this segment up down
there?
Yes.
This is part 2 of what we started last week, the State of Africana Studies. We had a broad discussion and a local discussion. Broad discussion with Professor Kelly Harris, who is leaving Seton Hall University after having been brought there by the organized pressure of some powerful young students from several years ago who were the Concerned 44, Chris Duran and their crew. And Chris came on with him, right? But he's leaving as a consequence of Seton Hall not implementing the demands that were made then. So there's a fresh new group of students who are coming back to the university raising the same or similar demands, because Africana Studies is nowhere near where it should be at Seton Hall. And these are the young people leading that call. Fatima, I want you to introduce your
before they start, I just want to tell you, this is beautiful that you said Chris and them did the work, but now you got fresh new students. And I just want to say to the students, there's a movie out that talked, and it was about Dr. King, but it was the person who preceded Dr. King. And the movie closes out.
John.
Yes, how the movie closes out, and they just say, "I wonder who's the next pastor gonna be," and that pastor was Dr. King. So
the film you're talking about is the Vernon John story. It was done in the early '90s. Vernon John was the predecessor of Dr. King at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and he was a bold, no-nonsense, nationalist, militant preacher whose congregation did not understand him, unfortunately. His niece would later be a major player in the challenge for desegregating schools in Virginia, Barbara Johnson, and there's a new book out on her. So you lift that up. I want to give people specific places to go to, right? Fatima, introduce your crew to us.
Hello, everybody. Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you all for having us. We really appreciate you all making this time in the show for us, so we can continue to give you all information about what is going on at Seton Hall University. So my name is Fatima Touré. I am a senior political science and Africana studies major at Seton Hall University. On the call with me, I have the Vice President of the Council of the Africana Scholars at Seton Hall University, Tawana Brown, as well as the Public Relations Chair of the Council of Africana Scholars, Amina Kuskat, as well as Trevor Conroy. He's a member of the Protect AFAM movement, and Chris Duran, an alumni of Seton Hall University and one of the leaders in the Concern 44 movement.
We know Chris.
Yeah.
we want everybody to know y'all. Chris is here backing y'all up today.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
So let's take it from right where you're at. What is the latest that's happening on campus? You're in the midst of facing a loss with a very good scholar, right? Who should have been given the supports and the mandate to do what Chris and them demanded that happened several years ago. What are your demands to update that struggle that was hot as hell just a few years ago?
So, as you all know, Dr. Harris will not be with us as of next semester. So we have been meeting with administration because this is an urgent matter, and we don't want them to kind of drag their feet on this issue, as the Africana Studies program has been in trouble for several years because they haven't been providing the resources that we need. So now it's to where we're losing Dr. Harris. So we did meet with administration last week and just got a really a more in-depth conversation about what their plan was for the Africana Studies program at Seton Hall University. And we also presented them with a list of demands. But when we spoke with them initially, and I asked them very directly, what are your plans for the next 1 to 2 or 3 to 5 years for the program? And they really did not have an answer as to what that looked like. And they deferred it to who would be the director or chair of the program, and said that would be their job to kind of provide a vision for the program. But that is an issue because we are having troubles filling in these positions. So they're putting the vision onto a position that's not filled and are not making the effort in an urgent way to fill this position. So our demands that we gave to them was, for one, to reinstate the Africana Studies program as a department at Seton Hall University. And for this, we need a minimum of 3 faculty members. We also demanded the hire of a full-time tenured Africana Studies director who is disciplined in the field of Africana Studies or Black Studies. And we asked for this tenured position so we know that whoever does fill this position has the best intentions for his students at heart. Moreover, we asked for a cluster hire for professors so students are not running into the issues of limited classes or canceled courses. So just making sure we have a sufficient amount of professors. We asked for 10 to 12 professors and a non-negotiable cluster hire. We also asked for the establishment.
Let me stop you there for a second. Let me just stop you there for a second because you're using language that some in our community might know. This is a teachable platform. So I want you to, whenever you have a moment where you got a chance really to blow something up, go ahead and blow it up. What do you mean by cluster hires? Make that plain for everybody.
So when we say a cluster hire, we mean hiring a group of professors or professors in a group as opposed to just hiring individually, and hiring professors who, for this case, for Seton Hall University regarding the Africana Studies Department, are disciplined in Africana Studies or Black Studies, but who can be outsourced to other departments or other schools like international or like diplomacy and international relations or the business school. So specifically for Seton Hall and the Africana Studies Department, we're asking for cluster hires of professors who have a background in Black studies, but can work within other disciplines. So they are more resourceful for the institution.
Right on. Now finish your flow. Go ahead. Excellent. Thank you.
No problem. And then we also asked for the establishment of a community council that would be inclusive of students, alumni, as well as faculty, so we can set benchmarks for the institution and make sure that the Africana Studies program right now is not finding itself in this sort of cyclical door to where we're always having one professor or limited classes, or students are struggling to complete their majors and minors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
now, go ahead. I was going to ask you. I want you to bring your comrades in the conversation because and it looks like some of you represent different arms or different organizations within the campus. lay out tell us about your respective organizations and voices and why it's important for y'all to have a united front.
Would somebody else like to kick this off?
So I can start us off with this one. So my name is Tawana Brown again, and it is a pleasure to be on here today speaking in regards to the Africana Studies Department at Seton Hall. So I am the Vice President of the Council of Africana Scholars, but I also sit on the Black Caucus as a chair for event coordinator. So when I think about unity when it comes to the organizations within the Black Caucus at Seton Hall University, this is a time more than anything where we are really expressing urgency. And I think it's a time for all student leaders and all organizations to come together, despite if they have majors or minors in Africana Studies or not. But it's really a call to action for all the Black students on campus to know that we cannot become complacent, because this is a result of when we become complacent. This is when the university lose sight of things like the Concern 44. The fact that we are here 4 years later and are demanding a lot of the same things. And even when we went back into the history of Seton Hall, and when it comes to the formation of the Black Studies program in general, dating back to 1978, when we compared the demands that were made in 1978 to 2018 and to today, they are very much the same. And this is a result of people becoming complacent, people just settling with the bare minimum that the university does, people, the student leaders that have organized, when they go on and leave, if it's not people in a position where they either have been mentored or they have the same motivation to advocate and express interest in these things, then it lose sight. And in an institution that is predominantly white, it is a call to action more than ever for Black students to really stand up and stand with their fellow Black students and really fight on behalf of us and to be of a support. And it really is a call to action to our Black men on campus specifically, because a lot of the times in these student organizations and these student movements and within the leaders, our Black males a lot of the time take a back seat. So I am really
I got in their behinds last week for you.
Really calling on for the Black men to stand up and show out.
Wow.
Right on. Beautiful. Wow. Beautiful. Go ahead, Ed.
No, I mean, when we were on Seton Hall campus 30 years ago,
talk about it.
When Bashir and them were up there, the brothers and the sisters were fired up. So to talk about it 30 years, from that, and listen to these young brothers and sisters say that the young brothers up there were not engaged, that's real disappointing, And thank you, Zaid, for getting in their butt about that, brother.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's an internal conversation that we need to have within the community around the question of sexism, right? And we need not to be afraid to have that conversation either. I get my black feminism as a Black man from the women of the Black Panther Party.
Yeah.
Right. I want somebody to try and step to some of that. You get your brains blown out. Right. Yeah. All right. So, but this ain't about me. It's about y'all. I want to hear y'all. I want to hear me. I want to hear. What do you need from the community?
Hello, everyone. My name is Amina. I'm actually a freshman political science major and pre-law student. I'm the PR chair of the Council of Africana Scholars, and I'm also the co-chair of a new organization on campus called Building More Leaders and Minorities. And the aim of that organization is to do exactly what we're doing with Protect AFAM movement. And again, the e-board for that organization is all Black and female. So to piggyback off of the sentiments from Tawana, we do need more Black men on campus and from the community to come and support Protect AFAM, because at the end of the day, we are advocating for the program, but we're trying to advocate on behalf of all Black Seton Hall students. And so, going back off of what Fatima was saying about the program itself and our demands, I think the biggest thing of all that we need the community and you all to take away from this is the fact that we have a lack of Black faculty on campus in general, but to lose our only director and full-time professor of the Africana Studies program is disheartening. And again, I'm not an Africana Studies major, but coming to Seton Hall and meeting Dr. Harris was like a breath of fresh air for me. As an activist in my own community, I was a member of the Black Lives Matter Patterson Youth Council, and that is kind of where
Black Lives Matter Patterson?
Yes.
That's a damn good chapter. We work with them on another level.
It truly is. And they were they actually jump-started my career as an activist, and learning what I did from my community, I wanted to take that into Seton Hall campus. But as a political science major, I have a lot of predominantly white, male, conservative, Republican poli-sci professors. And in these classrooms where you're one of a handful of Black students, let alone maybe one or two of the only people who are willing to be outspoken about these issues, it becomes really hard, and it becomes mentally and spiritually draining, as you guys were mentioning before. And so being able to meet Dr. Harris and knowing that there was another Black revolutionary on campus that was also in a faculty position that not only understands, our circumstance as Black people in America, but can also understand and understand what it means to be an activist and a revolutionary at a predominantly white institution. And so then, having found out that he would no longer be with us for the spring 2023 semester, it was disheartening and it was discouraging. And so again, there is a need to have Black presence in the faculty position on campus in general, but above all else, we need to have an Africana Studies program that is consistent, that is supported by the institution, because like Tawana was saying, this is over 51 years of Black students at Seton Hall advocating for the Africana Studies program. 51 years of Black students trying to prove to administration that Africana Studies is a real interdisciplinary academic study in a field that is, worthy of funding, of support, and of multiple tenured Black professors who are educated in and who have a background in and are dedicated to Africana Studies in general. So me personally, even though I'm a pre-law student, I still want to take Africana Studies classes because this is beneficial to me as an aspiring civil rights lawyer. And I can't do that. And I can't even take up Africana Studies as a major or minor if I wanted to, because I don't have the confidence that the administration will continue to support this study in the future. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to complete a major or minor in this study if we don't have the professors and the faculty needed to continue to support the program. So, Dr. Harris, he did what he could in his time here, but he was driven to resign.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely awesome. Trevor, you haven't said anything yet. I want to make sure that you're in the conversation that you heard. I want to ask all, and all of you have a grasp of it, but I want the community to hear your grasp of it. One of the things, the Black Africana Studies has a history at Seton Hall, and it isn't all bad. There was once upon a time, Africana Studies was leading the way for Africana Studies in this state. What is the leadership of the institution telling you as to why they cannot or have not or do not know how to restore something that did nothing but enrich that campus and enrich the status of that school for what it represented all over the country? Why are they not getting that?
Yeah, to follow up with you, there isn't a lot of feedback from the university as to why Africana Studies has been really taken a back seat to the rest of academics here at Seton Hall. You look at what Seton Hall advertises as an institution to try to get students to apply to the university, and you're looking at bio students, you're looking at the 3+3 program to get into the Seton Hall Law School with undergrad students to go through that, and you're looking at a lot of nursing students, and then the School of Business. And there's with that, this university does not advertise Africana Studies at all. I'm going to be honest, I came into this university for the school diplomacy, and with that, I was never presented an opportunity to take Africana Studies, even though as a potential future diplomat, the importance of understanding the cultural significance of and history pre and post African diaspora and its impacts on the world as a whole, we aren't presented with any opportunities in the school diplomacy to take Africana Studies classes. And it's a shame, because I've been talking with a lot of alumni and Dr. Pritchett and Dr. Harris, and in the history of Seton Hall used to be one of the top institutions in the nation for Africana and Black studies.
Right.
And it's just fallen so far. Last Wednesday, I went to a Seton Hall basketball game with a sign to protest to save the Africana Studies program. And with that, I ran into an alumni from the Africana Studies department who was devastated to hear that the struggle is still ongoing at this university. And he thought that it was fine. He's like, I was part of this struggle when this was happening originally. So I made a promise to him, we are going to fight to keep Africana, not only keep Africana Studies here at Seton Hall, but build a sustainable program that will grow even further. For our Direct and Social Action Committee, we have of the Protect AFAM movement, this winter break, we are going to develop a strategic plan for this movement. And with that, we're not only looking towards the spring semester, we're looking intermediately 4 or 5 years down the road, we're looking 10 years down the road, and we're looking 20 years down the road. 20 years down the road, I want a PhD program at Seton Hall for Africana Studies. That way we could streamline students coming in as freshmen and leaving as fully trained Africana scholars to then go and teach Africana Studies to the next generation of students.
Let me just share a couple of things with you, and I want to get my colleagues to come in and jump in this conversation. One, you are 15 minutes from the largest media center in the world. Two, you're 20 minutes from the United Nations, the international seat of diplomacy. And three, you are in the state that is the home state of the great Paul Robeson, one of our greatest radical diplomats that we have ever had. In fact, this Saturday, tomorrow, is the anniversary of him charging the United States government with genocide at the United Nations in 1951. Amina, you hear me? Law student, you hear me? Right? I want y'all to get that. I'm actually hosting something on Sunday that will lift that up. I'll reach out to y'all after that to share that with you. One of the things that happened this year, and I'm moving more towards program content now that I want y'all to think about, that you could build on, that Professor Harris gave you. You did, and I want you to talk about it. You did a model conference. Ed, appreciate this. You did a model convention of the 72 Gary Convention, the National Black Political Convention. I have an elder scholar who I used to be very close to, who does a model, does a UN model for young Black students in the name of training them to become diplomats. So in his short stay, he's already given you something that I want you to think about as a part of the things you want to include as you build out on it, and y'all can respond to the content that you've had, even with the limitations that you face. And Donna and Ed, you got to jump in this. And Chris has finally turned this camera on. I don't know why he was hiding.
I would like to circle back to the previous question that you first asked, as
sure.
in why the university is not providing answers as to why the Africana Studies program is not being funded. I would like to point out the fact that, again, we are talking about a predominantly white institution, and we're talking about an institution that does advertise Africana Studies on their website, an institution that prides itself off of DEI initiatives and certificates. And for me, just being in meetings with administration and with my fellow comrades in the Protect AFAM movement, we have learned just from having several conversations and talking with administration that their excuse or their way of justifying or trying to get us to understand why the Africana Studies program does not have enough faculty members is because the seats of students who are actually pursuing a major or a minor is not enough. But I would like to highlight the fact that how do you expect to have more majors and minors in a particular discipline when you do not have enough faculty members to actually support the program? So you're obviously setting up students to go to pursue something that they cannot rely on. I'm a sophomore at Seton Hall as an Africana Studies and Political Science double major. For me, the fact that Dr. Harris will no longer be with us in the spring of 2023, that leaves me questioning, will I be able to fulfill my major? So I think that it really calls into question the university's true integrity, and do they really want to support this program, or is this program just a tactic to check off a box to say that they have diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, I think you just spoke to it, right? Because I think that's really what's happening. It's about diversity and inclusion, And I think that that's what it is. And unfortunately, unless you all can prosecute that, right, the school in and of itself will get away with it, right? Because I think that you've got to do what the students before you did 2 years ago. You've got to shut that university down, but you also you've got to pull the community into it, right? You've got to make it you've got to make it a fight that involves visibility from the public, right? It's about public pressure, right? And when you can put public pressure on people, it will cause these very people who have a hidden agenda. You will cause their agenda to be exposed. So y'all have got to shut the university down. When we were there 30 years ago, that's what we did, right? That's what these brothers and sisters that Chris was a part of a couple of years ago. So y'all have got to be willing to go outside of your normal behavior, because what it seems like now is that y'all seem to be the nice, pretty students who want to come and have some meetings, and then they want to just push you off, and then kind of just let Dr. Harris just ease out the door. Y'all have got to organize with y'all other members on campus and decide what kind of step y'all want to take, and then just blow the thing up. Y'all got access to stuff that we didn't have access to on them phones, on the internet. I mean, y'all got everything. Y'all got every media y'all can imagine. Y'all can get incredible support right around this. And I'll tell you, I'll make a commitment to bring the National Black Political Convention Network to y'all. And we'll go live if y'all shut that university down. And we'll broadcast that to the entire Black world.
Yeah, to build off of what you're saying, the university seems to have this impression that, oh, this issue is being discussed right during final season, which is they're taking advantage of us as students, because now we have to split our time between saving an academic program, which, mind you, is their job as administrators to do, and then also studying for finals so that we could still graduate on time. But the admins seem to have this belief that, oh, we're just going to fall. This movement is, students are going to forget about this and it's going to fall apart over winter break. No, we are the digital age, and students on this campus, we grew up with technology, and we are going to mobilize and we are going to organize and streamline ourselves over this break. This is an opportune time, and with that, we're going to reach out to the community, and next semester, once we get moved back on campus, stuff's going to start happening.
Yeah.
And let me ask the question. The community on campus, the students that are on campus, what are their feelings about it? That are not particularly in this discipline, but what are their response to your concerns and to the fight that you're bringing to the administration?
Before they answer that question,
okay.
Let me answer that question. Pull Chris into this conversation. So,
Chris, you're muted.
He's not about to turn this stuff.
So, as somebody who is a leader, Chris, in terms of the fight that you all picked up on, and the mobilization that you guys organize, what say you about where they are now, and particularly about where the university backtracking? I mean, what say you about that, man?
Well, I mean, to begin with, I think the history of Black studies has to be properly understood in the first place. The fact is that Black studies was brought to college campuses around the country in spite of these institutions by students who were conscious of their role in a global anti-colonial movement during the 1960s. And as was raised in some of the comments, it was brought in large part because they had a lot of community backing as well. And so these were people who were representing the whole community on these college campuses. So Seton Hall University, I mean, they have regularly antagonized, professors through the years, whether it be Dr. Sales, some of the people that you've had on this show, and they didn't want Black Studies on their campus in the first place. They certainly don't want it to be a powerful department now. When they responded to our demands, they didn't answer any of our demands. They decided to give us diversity and inclusion initiatives, which took the focus away completely. They decided to, respond by giving, we asked for, we demanded 5 full-time professors in order to build a department. They gave us 1 director position on a 3-year contract. So none of the demands they were actually, again, unless you put a massive amount of pressure on them, they're not going to answer any of those demands. So we learned that very quickly, and we learned that, making. I think that the students now are in a lot better position in terms of being prepared to organize the struggle, and quite frankly, than myself and my comrades in my class were.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit of administration's response to our demands. They really, honestly, we asked them point blank, were they going to accept it? And they said, not at this time. But a few other things that they did mention were decoupling the chair position from the director position, which would give us 1 faculty position and 1 administrative position. But that still does not help the Africana Studies program at all, because that would still be just 1 faculty member teaching courses. And they tried to present that in a manner of like providing more resources for students and for the department. But we all know like that is not sufficient. 2 professors when we asked for 10 is not sufficient. And they're also, what they have said, instead of hiring, or when we haven't been hearing a lot about hiring, but what they have said is pulling in professors from other schools and departments and disciplines to fill in for Africana Studies courses and to fill in for Dr. Harris's courses next semester, which is resulting in students having limited classes, but more watered down content, because professors from other disciplines are having to adjust their curriculum and their courses to accommodate Africana Studies and Africana scholars. So as students, we are getting the short end of the stick for this. So yeah, just trying to get more professors with an Africana Studies or Black Studies background on campus. And frankly, they said that our demands were very ambitious during our last meeting. And they they said our demands were ambitious. And I actually did get a chance to speak with the president.
They should be ambitious.
I'm sorry?
They should be ambitious. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but damn it, they should be ambitious.
Yeah, and I did get a chance to meet with the president of the university, and he barely even stopped to have a conversation with me, but I forced it in anyway. And he basically, when I asked him,
but they didn't mean that positively, sister.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Okay.
No, we definitely call like the negative or the rude undertones of it. But when I did speak with President Nair very briefly, he basically just, when I mentioned the Africana Studies Department, mentioned DE&I initiatives and mentioned all the other ways that they were supporting DE&I, almost in a manner that sounded like it was okay to kind of substitute DE&I for Africana Studies, which is what's happening. So he mentioned providing more scholarship funding to the Martin Luther King Scholarship Association on campus. And I am an MLK scholar on campus, and I do benefit from that scholarship. However, that does not mean that it's okay to take away from the Africana Studies program, because we still need the resources within that department. And he basically attributed it to giving money to other scholarships and programs and to DE&I initiatives, essentially. So students have been dealing with limited courses because we've only had limited number of faculty, canceled courses. Students are finding out they're canceled. And this is across the board, not even just within the Africana Studies department. Other majors are finding out that they're canceled. Their classes are getting canceled and things as well, because the university, like Trevor said, they will push students towards certain majors and not provide the resources that they need as well. The biology department at Seton Hall University has hundreds and hundreds of students, but the classes are often unavailable. And that's because they push students towards certain majors and they don't spread the resources across the institution properly. So that's canceled courses, watered down material, limited courses, which is presenting issues when students are trying to graduate, especially for Africana Studies majors and minors. I think there are maybe only 4 or 5 majors, if even that, and we have several minors, and that's because the required classes that they need to graduate are not available because we don't have the professors to teach them. We really are calling out for support. So we have launched a social media campaign called protect.afam.shu, where we post updates on what is going on, events that and programs that we will be having, and also just trying to educate people on what Africana Studies is, because a lot of students, that's another big issue. A lot of students don't think that Africana Studies is a major that can be beneficial to their career. They think that they have to be a professor or a teacher, and it's limiting to them. And that was even my thought coming into Seton Hall University. I didn't know what Africana Studies was until I met Dr. Harris, and very similar to what Mina was saying. I was uncomfortable in my political science classes, but it took Africana Studies for me to get that balance on a PWI campus. But many students don't understand that it's an interdisciplinary major or study that you can work within across different sectors and different disciplines. So trying to educate students and people on that, like you can major in
Africana experience on the matter of science is the oldest in the history of the earth,
right?
With an Africana education,
right? So we've launched our social media campaign, and again, that's at protect.afam.shu. And like Trevor said, during this break, we are going on winter break, but we are really, really trying to organize and mobilize now, because this throughout the semester, we just really got a lot of pushback from administration when trying to meet and things like that. So next semester we're coming back strong. So that's what we're doing this break.
You know, while on winter break, you know, you prayerfully you will be home with maybe 1 or 2 generations, meaning your mom, your grandmother, maybe a great. Have these conversations, because you're like, grandma, and especially women, like, you know, remember you were my age and you was out here fighting so that you can get the right to vote. You know, I'm still doing that fight, you know, and get their input, because it's almost like the night after 2008, after President Obama, he won the election, and then within a month, all these discussions start coming out that we have we don't need affirmative action anymore.
We're now in a post-racial society.
Yeah, we're in a post-racial society. I mean, a month after he was elected, and then what happened was we realized how we were in a racist society is what we realized. So when you do go home, take the time to have those generational questions right at your, you know, beginning your immediate community, your family, you know, because oftentimes we do have 1 and 2 generations that we can still talk to. And if they and sometimes, especially in this techie world, we don't talk. And just to see if our grandma and great grandma understood that you're still fighting, and grandpa and great grandpa, that you're still doing a fight that they thought they had fought for you, that would be really interesting to hear that conversation.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And then just some other background issues. Sorry, I don't know if we have any more time, but just some other background issues that are like going on, or ways that alumni and the community members can support. For one, if you are a donation maker for Seton Hall, we actually stop making donations to Seton Hall because as paying students, we're not getting the resources that we need. And alumni and community members are huge donators to Seton Hall University. And I believe this year was the year they got the highest amount of donations. I believe it was like 140 million or something like that, most of which is supposed to go to faculty and resources, but it's not going to the right places. The university has just this semester completed the new university center, when that could have gone to other resources like providing more Africana studies professors and a director and developing the program, and things like that. And also another issue is not only that they are getting rid of Dr. Harris, although not asking him to leave, it is the deals that they're making behind closed doors. The offers that they're making to people to fill these positions are not respectable offers or contracts that people will want to work for. And that's another issue where we ask administration, or we're asking the community to hold administration accountable and write letters to the Dean of Arts and Sciences, Dean Georgetta Frierson, the provost, as well as the president of the university, President Joseph Nair, and ask them to make respectable offers to people who have a background in Africana studies or Black studies and give them what they are worth. Because no one should have to take a lowball offer to do something good for a program and do what they love and do their job. So we're asking that you stop any donations that you are making and write letters to administration. We have also started committees, student committees and things like that. So we are asking if you are interested in working with a committee as like a community advisor or faculty advisor, you do reach out and almost to just kind of guide students with helping with strategy and things like that. So thank you.
When you have this to look back at when you're finished. All Politics Are Local, the letter R on YouTube. I have an elder who Brenda Edwards, who's been blowing up the chat. Just really shouting y'all out and giving y'all some love that I want you to appreciate. But in addition to that, I want to just ask you this, right? As we begin to wind down, have you been in contact with other Black BSUs in New Jersey around what you're going through? Because one of the things that Brenda lifted up that's important, that New Jersey doesn't have an Africana Studies program anywhere in the entire state right now, and that's insane. That's insane. Right?
So yes, that is a part of our intake and outreach committee. Our representative Jared Lomax has been reaching out to other Africana studies or Black student unions and Black caucuses in New Jersey. Also, we hope to present this information at the Yale Black Conference that's happening early next year.
Also, I do want to add to that point, we are in contact with several student organizations from across North Jersey, and that we're trying to bring in, a lot more students, specifically at Seton Hall, to build alongside them as well. So, yeah.
And Chris, I don't know if you heard the beginning of the when Mayor Baraka did his show. At the high school level, he's having problems with young students having problems in high school and identity issues and things like that. So maybe the outreach committee can even reach out to the high school and to see if you can be of assistance, but at the same time building coalition and letting them know what's going on even before they get to a college campus, that there are some issues that they may be they're facing issues in the high school, but you guys are facing issues right there on the campus as well.
We got a question. We got a question from Principal Capella. And I'm not sure the status of where Africana Studies is at Rutgers. We talk about 3 campuses too. There is a department. There is a department in Newark, right? But the question, I don't know what its character of engagement is, and that's something that needs to be asked also. But it was Brenda that raised that whole question about the lack of such departments throughout the state. So I just want to acknowledge where that came from. But yeah, go ahead. You get ready to say. You get ready to add down. I'm sorry.
And I would just like to add to the fact that if there's a time to be engaged and tapped in with this conversation about Africana studies, it is now with the conversations of critical race theory, with the Stop Woke Acts. This is the time, this is the political, cultural, and social time to be tapped in and engaged, because young people, scholars, even people that are not in college, just community members, etc., they need to understand that Africana studies is a well-respected interdisciplinary major. Is something that you could literally go on to be anything with. And I came to Seton Hall University because of their advertised Africana studies department. I didn't come to Seton Hall for their biology major, for none of those other majors that they had, but specifically because they had their Africana studies program. And that was something that I was looking for, because I knew that I wanted to major in Black studies. And Dr. Harris played a huge part in that, and the reason why I decided to go to Seton Hall. So this is a fight that myself, as long as with my comrades, that we are very passionate about, something that we're very tapped into, we're very engaged, and we're ready to work. We're ready to really make some noise, because it is too important and such an urgent matter for it to not be continued. And this is something that, like like Trevor mentioned earlier, that we would love to have incorporated within our institution long after we're gone, and not fearing like, will there be a next cohort of students that are equally as tapped in and engaged as ourselves, or like the members of the Concern 44.
Excellent. So we get ready to wind down. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have a very important question.
Well, go ahead. You ask it, Donna.
We have an important question.
Young.
This is a hip hop political show. So while we ask you to come on and discuss your issues and let the community know what's going on from your perspective, we also want to know what hip hop artist, individual, or group are you listening to that inspire you? So when you're going out on the green to talk, to go into those meetings with the administration, who are you listening to? What hip hop artists, again, individual or group, are you listening to that inspire you? And let's start with, who we're going to start with? Let's start with Trevor.
I'm going to be honest, before this summer, never listened to hip hop, never listened to rap. I had friends at my public high school that were like, oh, I'm going to make it big on SoundCloud. And I'm like, no. But this summer, I work at a all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant in Princeton. And there, we just hired a new line cook, and he started playing every day, all day, NWA.
Wow.
It's on my, anytime I'm walking on campus in my earbuds, that's what's blasting my ear. That's what's inspiring me to make sure that we are doing the action that's needed to keep this program, and not only keep it, but foster development to make it sustainable and growing, and take back our title, because we originally were a top Africana scholar institution. So I want Seton Hall to take that title back.
Okay, who's gonna come up next?
I'll go. So I'll be honest, I was a little apprehensive about accepting admission to Seton Hall University, but I will say that Miss Lauryn Hill, she's a singer, she was in a band, she can rap. Knowing that she came from the North South Orange area, and knowing that she too was a revolutionary and spiritualist, that gave me the confidence that, I could come to this area in New Jersey and still thrive and be able to survive this institution. And so Miss Lauryn Hill, I feel like, is the person I have on replay, specifically songs like Mystery of Inequity or I Get Out, or and even like the Fugees. I love them. And so yeah, I listen to Miss Lauryn Hill,
who went to high school right down the street from Seton, not too far from Seton Hall. Okay, who's up next?
She's also the executive director of a film I want y'all to check out called Why As We Americans. Why As We Americans. She's the executive director of that film. Look that up. I give homework. I'm sorry, y'all.
Ned, if you can put us on panel so we can see everybody's name. Okay, Fatima.
I would say my person would be Kendrick Lamar. I feel
Okay, I love me some Kendrick Lamar.
is a revolutionary, and you can see that in his music. So I would say Kendrick.
Yeah, I heard Kendrick Lamar was a PK. He's a preacher's kid. I didn't know that. Tawana.
Nipsey Hussle, hard work, dedication, and double up.
Okay, all right. Chris.
Chris just did his dissertation a few days ago too, so I want to shout him out on the air. We appreciate you, so we're proud of you.
Thank you so much. It's not a dissertation; it's a master's thesis. I'm not that advanced yet, but
Speak it into existence, though. I hear you. Go ahead.
Listen. No, but I gotta shout out my comrade sister Felicia George. Baba Zaid knows exactly who that is.
She's right down there, see the top of 100 Maplewood. Yeah.
She's right from my town, Maplewood. She was instrumental in organizing the Concern 44, and she makes a lot of really dope revolutionary music. Check her out on Instagram. Anything.
Maybe you have to bring on campus.
We need to bring her on the show. Let's talk about that, Chris. We can bring Felicia on. She hasn't been on, I don't think.
Well, thank you, and we hope and don't wait for us to call you. You have access to us. Let us know. We're here every Friday, 6 to 9. And if there's something you need to get out and you need space for a little time, we're here for you. So just please reach out.
This is a drum. This is a community
drum. Everybody have a wonderful holiday. And it looks like y'all gonna be working over your holiday. So
yes.
So you got shoulders to stand on. That's all right. We had to do the same damn thing. It's all right.
Right.
So the wisdom of the elder and the zeal of the youth. So we're here.
That's right. Well, I'll tell y'all, when we were on campus 30 years ago, we never left campus, right? when everybody went away, we created a magazine. Y'all could probably go find it or Google it.
So somebody just lifted that up to the conversation there.
Called College Entertainment Review magazine, and we worked in the lab. And at that time, Professor Pritchett and Dr. Sells were on campus, and they damn sure didn't want a group of black students staying on campus while all the white students were gone. But we took full advantage because we couldn't afford computers at home. So we took full advantage of those labs and used those computers, and we created a national black college magazine. And that's how all of us became writers and teachers. We taught ourselves what we didn't know and built careers. And what you're on now is an extension of what we did 30 years ago. That's what all politics and local is. This thing that you're on right now.
What was it? What was it? It was called All Politics. What was the name of the magazine? What was it called?
It was called the College Entertainment Review magazine.
Okay.
We created that magazine on the campus of Seton Hall 30 years ago in the lab, right there. And y'all can go Google it, look it up. Y'all will see all the articles that we wrote. It was black and it was strong, right? And if you flip over on the back, it was red, black, and green. In there, we said what the hell we wanted to say, and we put it everywhere. It went all over the country to all black college campuses, and we toured and built relationships with college students, and we shut Seton Hall down. And you know what? They couldn't F with us because they knew we had a media strength we could say any goddamn thing we wanted to say about it, and that gave us power.
And Ed, I wanted you to reiterate your offer to them that you could bring them to the Black National if they. I think you told them they organized in the beginning.
If they organize something on campus, we'll bring the National Black Political Convention Network to them, and we will shoot that live. If they do a protest on campus, we'll bring the network to them. We'll come there and we'll shoot live on campus, and we'll broadcast that to Black America.
Wow. To build off of what you're saying with protests, tomorrow at the Prudential Center, where we have students, we just finished right before this we came on this podcast. We just had students here making posters. We're going to be at the Prudential Center because Seton Hall basketball is playing. We're going to be protesting to save the Africana Studies program there, and we're going to then move inside with our right underneath the student section basket. We're going to have people with protest signs. Make sure we get on the NCAA basketball.
NCAA, I know what you're trying to say. Yeah, we got
NCAA. Yep.
Yeah. Good.
Well, we
good.
support
Good.
you.
DJ Rhino, did you get all of them? We had NAA, Nipsey Hussle, Lauryn Hill. Did you get them all? Kendrick Lamar, Chris is a local artist. What's her name? Chris? I forgot.
Felicia.
We got a lot of DJ notes, so we can get all this art. Okay. Thank you.
All right, y'all. We'll be in touch. I need you when you send out press releases, make sure I get them.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
We're proud of you. We got you back.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank y'all.
Good night.
All power to the people.
All power. That's right, sir.
DJ Rhino.
It's one of our grand cubs.
Do you want to start with Twitch? What you start? What's that T-shirt saying?
Let's do it.
Oh, that's the thing from the movie theater.
Yeah.
That's the movie theater
The
thing.
movie theater that used to be the Paramount movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I missed out. I missed out last week. I wasn't here last week because, but I wanted to just, shout out some good news about, Takeoff's killer was apprehended. Brittany Griner's home, on the way home, and what was the third one that I had? Oh, and Warnock one. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, so that was all good news that I wanted.
It was a big deal because young people turned out in mass from our community.
Yeah, to the point that they want to raise the voting age to 21 now.
That's right. That's what that's all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we got to claim that. Right on. Good stuff, Rhino.
Rhino, did you and you know what's so funny? Every time you say I'm gonna be on, what do you say? What's the name of the handle that you're on Saturdays?
Oh, the Shake Up. The CMZ.
But you said join me on. It's called something Twitch or.
Twitch.tv/.
Yeah, and I used to think that was Twitch's thing.
DJ Twitch.
Yeah,
DJ Twitch, man. You know that kind of shocked the world, man. You know,
right?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think I had asked you that one time when you first started doing it. He was like, join me on Twitch. I thought it was something that DJ Twitch was doing.
Oh, nah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rhino, I got a hip hop gem for you.
What's up?
The stepfather of Tupac Shakur, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, one of our pioneers of acupuncture.
Yes,
right?
Coming home.
Old revolutionary was released from prison today.
Yeah,
he's home.
That's right. But understand the context. Long struggle, denied parole 10 times, dying of stage 4 bone cancer, right? But we didn't give up. We were not going to let our warrior healer die in the clutches of the state, right? So the man that shaped Tupac's manhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who paid the price of his life, 25 years of his life. He did almost 40, right? This is now free from, is no longer in the clutches of the state.
That's right.
All right.
Where was he locked up at, Dave?
Say it again.
Where was he locked up at?
No, most of his time was done in federal. He was convicted in New York, but he did most of his time in federal facilities. He was last in California.
Okay. And Rhino, we at the pop meeting we were talking about there was me and oh God, I just lost the young man when Officer Joyce Carnegie got killed, and then they killed. Oh, why did I just lose his name? Faison. Yeah, and did you know Faison? Rhino, did you know him?
No.
Okay, because he had done because he had done some work with Tupac, and when I had mentioned that, a lot of people didn't know that, because he was out there. He had just got started, and back then you would go to concerts, you hand people your, I guess, tape back then, and I don't know how he was able
Ed,
to
you know
reach
that, right? Minnie was close to
Huh?
Tupac.
Say it again.
No, telling Ed that Minnie is close to Tupac.
He what?
Yeah, he was very close to Tupac.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Faison had an opportunity to do some work with him. A lot of people didn't know that. So
No,
and a lot going on.
That was a gem.
Mm-hmm.
That was a mic dropper. Yes, it was.
Yeah. And even I just told Rhino, did you get the CD? I sent you did you get my text I sent you? Rhino, I came out of Walgreens, and a young artist in Austin, he was selling his CD, and he was just outside of Walgreens.
Oh yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, so I got to get that to you. And he's right here in Orange. But and I remember what's the young brother from he's from Patterson, the rapper from Patterson, and he has the glasses.
Oh, you
He has the
talking
glasses.
about Fetty Wap?
Fetty Wap. Yeah, and I remember Assemblyman Wimberly did an article on Fetty Wap, and Fetty Wap would tell how he would be out on Main Street in Patterson, and he would be selling his CDs, and then he would go to the club. I mean, he had this strong, and there was just his hustle on getting his work out. He was about it. He would be going here, then he would go do this, and he would do that. And when you see it, and came out and see that young man, and that was a cold night. He was out there selling them CDs, and I was like, all right. I said, and I said, okay, and I have to get this in our DJ's hand, and so look out for his call. So I have to make it my business to come put it in your mailbox, okay?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, another thing that I didn't get to bring up because I wasn't here last week. Also, the show at NJ Pack that took place November 19th with Ross Baraka and Do It All. Did we talk about that?
No.
I don't believe we talked about that. Yeah, I went to go check that out. Yeah, it was it was a jazz hip hop spoken word event that took place at NJ Pack. That took place November 19th. I believe that was a Friday or Saturday. But I was just amazed, just from the beginning to the end. I mean, the lineup. I mean, it opened up with our own mayor Ross Baraka and now Councilman Do It All Dupre.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? They came out and they did poetry and did some rap and stuff together. That's how they set it off. That was like the intro, the opening to the show. And then but then you had like so many like heavy hitters. I mean, we had Black Thought come out there. You had Speech from Arrested Development come out there. Most Def, Yasin Bey was there. Nikki Giovanni was in the house. And that was a pleasure to watch Nikki Giovanni. You know what I'm saying? The jazz musician Christian McBride. He was basically like the
band bass player. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, and he was basically the band leader for that night. And but it was a beautiful night, man. And then
because they always do the hip hop something every year about this time. Hip hop Nutcracker, yeah.
No, that's different. That's a different show.
This wasn't
this weekend too, though. By
jazz,
the way,
it was based on jazz, hip hop, spoken word. Chuck D and Rakim also they were on the bill, but they didn't make it. But the show was so good, you didn't miss Rakim and Chuck D because a lot of people want to see Rakim and Chuck D. Of course, myself, I want to see Chuck D, but even without them showing up, man, the show was incredible, man. And just to see everybody to come out and do what they did. And then in the middle of the whole show, dead smack in the middle, they did a tribute to Tame One. of the artifacts. So that really broke me down. When I saw that, I was like, wow, because that was totally unexpected. And I know that was on the strength of Do It All and Ross Baraka. So, you know, big ups to both of them for you know, for that whole setup, man. That whole show was incredible, man. It was beautiful.
NJ Packer's done some decent things on hip hop education.
Go check it out. It was good. It was good. What'd you say?
Beautiful. NJ Packer's done some decent stuff on hip hop education.
That was a good one. That one was a real good one.
Yeah.
That was a pleasure.
We got to give him that.
Yeah, Rhino's doing as part of the hip hop education thing at NJ Pack. But on my timeline on my Facebook timeline, we were down at the North Library on this day a couple of years ago when they did that big thing at the North Library, Rhino. And it was a tribute to somebody.
Wasn't that
who was it?
That wasn't the Jerry Gann thing, was it?
Yes, it was. That's why we were there. Yup.
Yeah.
That came in my timeline of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were still in the I brought it. We did that. We brought the whole crew into the studio and did a tribute to Gary. We were still at Rutgers at the time to Jerry.
Yeah.
And Donna, your point also.
I just heard a song with Rakim, Nas, and Jay-Z. Is that new? They said it's like new. It's like a remix.
I gotta see. Sometimes
I'll send it to you. It's like 3 weeks old. Ooh. Yeah. Rakim, Nas, and Jay-Z. I'll send it to you.
Now, to your point that you raised earlier, I want to clarify something, but it's relevant to our conversation here, right? Mm-hmm. The Nutcracker, the hip hop Nutcracker, is a reimagining of a classic dance.
Yeah,
that is the Nutcracker by Tchaikovsky through a hip hop lens, and Curtis Blow is the MC for the whole show, right?
Yeah,
one of the founders, right?
Grant Vaughn is part of it as well.
It's a musical, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you have the fusion between classical music on the one hand, and hip hop on the other, coming together for an experience to create an original.
Yeah, I went to see it one year at NJ Pack.
This weekend. It's only on Saturday. That's it. At NJ Pack. I was trying to get some tickets for my granddaughter's birthday. It's next week. She hanging out with her friends. She ain't want to go, right? But I was trying to get them to go.
Yeah.
And DJ Rhino, have you been down to First Lady Baraka's Winter Village?
Nah.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about their vendors down there. There's a lot of you know. One thing I know about Mayor Baraka and Do It All, they had did that song "The Prayer," I believe, and it was from Adam Clayton Powell's poem, I believe. But
keep the faith.
Keep the faith.
Keep
okay.
The faith, baby.
Yeah, I played it in my session.
That was Adam's speech. Adam's most classic speech.
Yeah. I played that. I played it in some of my sets.
Yeah, to watch Mayor Baraka.
That's what I thought about. Matter of fact, I think they did some of that at the show at NJ Pack. They did.
Good. Yeah, they should have.
Yeah, they're both artists, so to see them in there, I know they was just in there.
Yeah,
they was
man,
in there.
I left out the Last Poets. The Last Poets were there, and then Ross Baraka, Brother Mayor, got back up there with the Last Poets and did some more work, man. And it was great to hear Ross over, the Last Poets, playing the congas and all that. It was beautiful, man. While they chanting in the background while Ross is doing his thing. It was a beautiful experience, man, just to see him in that element, you know what I mean? And then to think, man, this is our mayor, you know what I mean? It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I often go back to Deaf Poetry and repost that when the mayor do that, a doo-dah. And when he does that one,
that's Jack.
That one right there. And his face was so full, and we want a real America. Yeah, I go back and I listen to that often and repost it now and then. But it's in his element, and I can remember, probably like 30 years ago at that house they used to do the poetry thing, the poetry slam, and this was before Black Poetry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He did it. It needs to be brought back. He did an excellent spoken word CD in the 90s called Shorty for Mayor free Mumia Abu Jamal. We were in court today for Mumia too. We had a judge that's trying to figure out what you're gonna do with his case, as we repacked the house and we shut the block down. But if you can find Shorty for mayor, free Mumia Abu Jamal, it's a collector's item. Get it. Let's get it. That's what Raz was. And that was right around the time that he was also doing stuff with the Fugees, because he's on their album too.
Right.
People forget
he's on Lauryn Hill's album as well.
That's right.
I wonder if the mayor, I got to see if he has an IMDb, because he's done a lot of art. He's done a lot of work in art.
IMDb is for films.
It's for art. I mean, but he's done like
I'm an actor. I'm trying to tell you something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? IMDb is for film.
And it's for music too.
No.
And Broadway.
No, it's for film. It's film and theater.
All right. Because I've seen music on people's IMDb. And speaking of theater, since we talked about, there's a young brother left. Is it Jordan Cooper, who got all the way to Broadway, and his Broadway is Ain't No More, and and he wasn't getting, people weren't buying tickets. So, because you have the unions and, you got to pay. So they had told him that he had to close down on the 18th because he couldn't probably pay the bills. But the artist came to his response, and like Tyler Perry bought out a couple of shows and other artists bought out a couple of shows. And as a result, he's been extended. His Broadway play is called Ain't No More. So look out for it. Might be some tickets out there. It's on Broadway. My mentor and his wife went, and they said it was excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, real quick, speaking of that, I also want to shout out Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Too Short, and E40. They came together as a super group. They're calling themselves Mount Westmore, and they're going to be putting out an album pretty soon. I think there's a single that's circulating right now. I don't have the title on me right now, but these dudes, I mean, if you know about the legacy, these dudes are icons. We're talking about Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Too Short, and E40. Like, that's legendary West Coast. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm sure once these dudes go on tour, it's gonna be crazy. I'm definitely gonna be trying to be up there in the seats and check these dudes out. It's gonna be major funk involved in that in that soundtrack as well. So yeah, big ups to Mount Westmore, Snoop, Cube, Short, and 40. And then again, real quick before we get up out of here, I just want to say rest in peace to another legend. We lost another legend in the game, Granddaddy IU. He was one of the legendary members of the super crew, the Juice Crew, coming out of Queens. Granddaddy IU was actually born in Queens. He was raised in Hempstead, Long Island. But Biz Markie was the one that discovered him and put him on. You know what I mean?
Markie. Nobody beats the Biz.
Yeah, rest in peace to Biz Markie. Biz Markie was the one that ended up heard his demo and put him on, got him signed to Cold Chillin' Records. And Granddaddy IU was one of the legends, one of the legendary members of the Juice Crew. The thing that I respected about Granddaddy IU, just outside of his music, was that he always came across as one of those brothers that was very acceptable, and he was, accessible. You know what I'm saying? He was very accessible to the people. Like, he was very open to the people. You can get close to him and you can kick it. He didn't have a problem rubbing elbows with the cats that was on the come up trying to get in the game or whatever. Like, he was just a real cool brother, real humble like that. And that's what I remember about Granddaddy IU. And there's so many people that I'm sure will say the same. You see pictures of Granddaddy IU with everybody. Like, everybody loved just him as a person. You know what I mean? His music was dope too, but just as a brother, man, Granddaddy IU was peace. So we're gonna miss that legend, man. Rest in peace, Granddaddy IU. And that's all I got.
And yeah, DJ Ryan, you was traveling last week, and we had a journalist on, and when she did her, who inspired her, she said Digital Underground.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then that was where Tupac started. You know what I'm saying? Tupac started as a dancer for Digital Underground.
Yeah. And thus that's how Faison came up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, y'all.
Well,
Yeah.
this year we have 5 Fridays, and our 5th Friday I have to talk about. So we have 5 Fridays at the end of the year. So as we close out the year, we can do our
Last Friday is on Cuba creativity.
We've been talking about, but last several years we've been doing like a reflection of our year. So let's talk about it. But we're at 9 o'clock. EP.
All right, y'all.
Hey, real quick, I'm just gonna say, check me out tomorrow, twitch.tv/Rhino CMC for Shake Up with CMC3. I'll be on there tomorrow doing my thing. And again, rest in peace to DJ Twitch.
Rhino. Saeed, you got any final words?
Yeah, just briefly, shout out to everybody who really, loaded it up from Mumia today. We got a mural, we had a UN brief, bunch of stuff. Stay tuned. Sunday, we've got a strong presentation, Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, Facebook Live. Look forward to that. 6 o'clock.
All right.
The only thing I want to say is please be intentional. If you have to say something, try to inspire. Look into people's eyes. Notice when you say how you doing, notice how they're doing. And let's watch out for our brothers, because we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. Let's be intentional about community.
Yeah. Well, as far as me, I want to thank everybody for coming through tonight. I want to thank Annette for being in the background and keeping us moving. Thank you, Annette. And want to thank all of the guests, and also thank high school students back as well. And we definitely want to thank the mayor for coming through and doing the mayor's forum, and of course, all of y'all, right? Because all y'all make the show.
The mental health section was heavy too.
And the young people, William, Barbee, and Bob, thank all our guests. And John, when he's not here, he's still here.
That's right. So we thank John for organizing and putting the show together as usual. So all the hidden hands and everybody that's a part of All Politics Are Local, which is actually an extension of the College Entertainment Review magazine. Right. So we thank all of y'all, and until next week. Who's up next week?
That's the fourth Wednesday. That's the fourth Wednesday.
That's the disciples.
Yep. So the disciples up next week. So we'll see y'all next week. The disciples. We thank y'all for tuning in to All Politics Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We'll see y'all next week.
And you don't stop.
Peace.